Good evening. The Design Review Board number 1 public meeting of December the 9th, 2010 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present on a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of this meeting and possible board decisions and Design Review Board appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Roll call: Board Member Eliano.
Here.
Board Member Insua.
Here.
Board Member Palmer.
Here.
Board Member Simonian. Board Member Yu is absent this evening. Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on December 2nd, 2010. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. The board may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The board may refer the matter to the proper departments section for investigation and report. At this point in time, I do not have any oral communication cards.
I don't. I only have project-specific cards.
None. So there are no oral communication items, which brings us to the calendar. At this point, also, there are no staff announcements. So I would like to turn the meeting over to Chairman Insua.
Good evening, everyone. Is this our last meeting of this year?
It is.
Interesting. Yeah, it's been a quick year. Quick year.
Quickly.
Wow. All right. Well, evening, everybody. Let's start with our first case. The first case this evening is 1 PDR 2010-042-A 828 Ridge Drive. And why don't we have our staff presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The first item before you is located at 828 Ridge Drive. The project description basically consists of a remodel and an addition of the existing house. The site is currently developed with a one-story, 1,320 square foot single-family house with an attached 479 square foot two-car garage. The project involves adding 746 square feet to the first floor, and that would include converting the existing garage, which is 479 square feet, into habitable floor area, and adding a new 1,420 square foot second-story addition. The second-story addition will cover the majority of the building footprint on the ground floor, and in addition, a new 356 square foot patio is proposed at the rear of the house. The total area for the house with the addition will be 3,494 square feet, and new colors and materials are being proposed for the house, including new fenestration, new stucco, and new roof material. I also want to highlight that because the existing garage is being converted to floor area, a new two-car garage is being proposed at the front of the house, as noted on the renderings pinned on the board behind you. And I'll briefly approach the board just to highlight the location of the addition for reference. This is the site plan that I have posted, and this is Ridge Drive going north. This would be the west elevation, and this is where the existing garage is located, which would be converted to habitable floor space. And this is the location of the footprint of the second-story addition. And the first floor addition will be primarily located along the north side of the existing house. Questions so far? Okay. And again, the proposed renderings, as you noted on the pictures that are being passed around, and I'll go into it more detail in my staff report. The existing house, in terms of its design, will change from a ranch-style house more into more of an updated, more contemporary version of Spanish colonial revival. I did not put those up, but someone else did. Okay. So they are part of this project.
You can be continuing?
Yes.
Okay.
The project is located in the R1R restricted residential zone, and according to our guidelines and our map, the property is located in the Chevy Chase Estates, specifically in terms of our maps. However, it's not actually located in that area per se, in that area, but in terms of the district, that's the way it's highlighted in our design guidelines map. And as you know, that area is the predominant architectural style in the area is ranch-style homes. In terms of site planning, the topography consists of uphill sloping terrain along the front of the property, and the cross slope runs in a north-south direction following the slope of the street. The building footprint is actually located on a flat pad, and there is a dramatic slope at the rear of the property. The average current slope is approximately 44%, and that's according to city records. No major changes are being proposed to the site planning as a result of the project. The existing building footprint, again, will remain the same except for the new addition on the ground floor. And the applicant is proposing to maintain the existing 20-foot setback to the front of the existing garage, which again will be converted to habitable floor space, and then the location of the setback at the ground level and approximately 23-foot setback to the new second story. Again, overall, the project site planning in terms of the house, garage, and driveway location is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. In terms of site walls, the existing retaining wall along the north side of the property, which may not be visible on these plans, but perhaps on the photos, that particular wall will be removed, and a new 5-foot high retaining wall is proposed. The wall will be constructed with decorative material to blend with the landscaping and the hillside conditions. And the front portion of the wall that is located within the 15-foot setback it needs to have a maximum exposed height of 18 inches above grade, because that is a code requirement. And the remaining portion of the wall that is within 5 foot of the interior setback line shall have a maximum exposed height of 3 feet and 5 feet high beyond the 5-foot property line. But again, those are zoning issues that will be addressed during the plan check process. Overall, the site planning and parking arrangement appears consistent with the majority of the homes in the neighborhood, and the overall proposed site plan is consistent with the neighborhood pattern. In terms of mass and scale, the existing ranch-style house has a low-profile, wide horizontal facade, which is consistent with the existing ranch-style homes in the immediate area. The new design, again, resembles a contemporary version of Spanish colonial revival architecture with various forms and volumes. The applicant has made an effort to set back the second-story addition from the street, approximately 6.5 feet, and has placed the addition somewhat towards the north side of the property. However, additional consideration should be given to the placement of the second floor and the overall massing of the building, as it appears to present greater verticality than most of the homes along Ridge Drive. The homes along Ridge Drive, again, were constructed according to the contours of the slope and are on flat pads that step down with the topography, and that's something to consider when reviewing this project. And that's what actually staff, when analyzing the project and preparing the staff report, that's what staff took into account. But again, there have been efforts to reduce the apparent mass and scale of the house. The applicant has applied building materials and the location of the building and the addition as it relates to the site and topography, and the use of balconies and various bricks in the roof lines are attempts to minimize the overwhelming building mass, which is at a scale with the surrounding neighborhood. However, additional modifications to the overall massing would be necessary, especially at the front. That would be along the west elevation, since it's visible from the street, and again, it's quite close to the street. The vertical mass on the west elevation above the front entry should be redesigned in a more horizontal fashion in order to better integrate with the overall design of the house. And the overall height of the new garage and second floor above can be lower in order to reduce the massing. So in summary, the overall the mass and scale of the building will change as a result of the new addition. And again, the applicant has made an effort to reduce the appearance of the large home by setting it back towards setting back the second story approximately 6.5 feet, and has pushed it towards the upslope on the north side of the property. Additional modifications are recommended, as I alluded to earlier, in order to respect and maintain the neighborhood character and improve the overall building mass and design, especially at the front of the house. In terms of building design and detailing, again, the applicant is proposing a variety of material which is consistent with the proposed revised architecture, and that would include the application of smooth stucco finish, Spanish tile, aluminum-clad wood windows, wood accents that would include wood corbels and rafter tails. As proposed, the building materials will enhance the building, the design, and provide a varied yet cohesive palette which is consistent with the chosen architecture. And again, overall, the project has incorporated design elements that are prevalent within the immediate neighborhood, and the selected materials and textures are in keeping with the architectural style of the house. Staff's recommendation is return for redesign, again, but primarily due to the mass and scale of the building, as I alluded to earlier. Some items to consider is to modify the front entrance and second floor above to reduce the vertical appearance, modify the design to reduce the overtly vertical and overall massive appearance. The design should incorporate horizontal elements. And item number 4 has to do with how much of the existing exterior walls and roof combines to be demolished. So in the future, during the plan check process, this is something that staff will look at further and carefully, although we have already done some preliminary plan check as it relates to how much demolition will be done. However, the applicant needs to submit a formal drawing that includes, as stated on item number 4, dimensions of the existing roof area to be demolished, existing exterior walls, and length and heights of all exterior walls to be demolished. So we can, again, carefully analyze how much of the existing house is being demolished so that they do not go over that threshold, which is 50%, which if it does, then it would be considered new construction, then current zoning laws would apply. For example, setbacks would require interior setbacks 10 foot, et cetera, et cetera. Lastly, strong consideration should be given to providing newly designed landscaping, especially at the front. And with that, that concludes staff presentation. If you have any questions, I am available.
I've got a question. Actually, it's for Stephanie or Vilka. Should we be checking that issue with respect to walls and roofs that are being lost? Because we're looking at something that, if it passes and we're over that calculation, a couple of things come to mind. One, it gives the impression that the structure was good, and it's fine. Let's say it is approved, but we're potentially approving, if we do approve it, something that won't be approved with respect to code. It feels to me like in the past, we've had that calculation clarified, understood, and then it goes to DRB. Why are we putting something, I think, a little bit out of sequence here? Okay. Why are we putting something out of sequence? Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, technically, it's really only required for building permit. I know it's been the board's very strong preference to have that clarified before the meeting, and we have tried to do that in this case. We weren't able to complete the communications with the applicant to get it really nailed down here, but we've made it quite clear to them on numerous occasions that this is an issue that has to be resolved, so they are definitely on notice.
Okay, I know, but I don't see it as a building and safety issue. It's a zoning issue. It's planning and zoning. It's not building and safety. It's whether the
Well, yeah, this,
structure is removing.
it is a zoning regulation, although this isn't, the full check with zoning standards under law doesn't have to be done until the building permits is issued.
Yes, Celia.
Actually, I believe that there were calculations submitted to staff from the applicant regarding the calculations. Based on those calculations, they're saying that not more than 50% is being removed, except staff will need to verify that. So there is this ability to go forward with this particular project, and if at the time of building plan check, if they cannot go ahead and prove that not more than 50% is being removed, they know full well that they're going to have to come back to the design review board with a brand new project that meets all of today's zoning code standards. So they've been made aware of this, and staff has received preliminary calculations stating that it doesn't meet that 50% rule.
I mean, I hate to burden the applicant.
It's not burdening because they were
or,
very much
you take
put
the-
away.
You're taking a huge risk. When you do a verification, and actually this is just for the general knowledge, and does that include the building and safety when you start looking at walls that are being removed so that the engineers, plan checkers and stuff walk with you and the applicant as they show you which walls are being removed?
That's
or-
on a case-by-case basis. Again, until they open up the walls, sometimes we don't know what the conditions of the walls might be.
Yeah.
But again, just to repeat, based on the calculations that were submitted by the applicant, at this point in time, the applicant is stating that it does meet that 50% rule. That will still need to be verified, and especially, they were put on notice that if the building does not meet that 50% threshold, they will be required to come back with a new application that complies with all of today's zoning standards.
Yes.
And just one final note on this. We did meet actually with the contractor for the job and, talked about this issue with him too, and, the possible danger of once you go into the field and you're opening up walls and you find stuff. And he has some ideas of ways that perhaps some more of the existing walls could be saved if the calculations were coming out that it might lose non-conforming rights. But those walls that could be saved were in the back of the house and wouldn't really affect the design that you're doing now, design review you're doing now.
Okay. I mean, my feeling is always to protect any applicant, to make sure that this process goes smoothly and quickly and minimize any risk and stuff. Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff?
The elevations, we've got an incorrect. There, I think, is really the north elevation. I just want to clarify.
Yes, there are two south elevations. It's actually this would be the east, and this would be the west.
And the ones on the left is,
South,
that's the north.
that is
At the side of the garage?
that is correct. This would be north, and this would be the south. You are correct.
Okay. And second question, I just saw a photo that looked like there had been some changes made to the entry and roofing and a shed roof over the garage. Is that changes that have been proposed since this drawing, or what's being submitted?
Yeah, a little eyebrow.
Originally, they did have a shed roof, as shown in that rendering. However, the most recent and current submittal does not include the shed roof.
Okay.
Actually, this was the old design.
Right, and you can, so we shouldn't be saying that because it's,
Okay.
Yeah, this was the old design, and after the applicant met with staff, they made some additional modifications.
Okay.
okay.
And one more item, we did receive a letter from the neighboring property to the north, and we are making copies, so I will distribute them shortly.
Okey-doke. Any more questions for staff? We're good? Okay. I've got 2 speaker cards. Does the designer or the applicant want to go first? Okay, so that would be the applicant?
Actually, whoever speaks first, whether it's the applicant or the designer, has 5 minutes, and then the additional party has 3.
I'll take the big one.
Okay, so the
That helps.
applicant takes the 3.
It helps make the decision.
Okay, so the designer takes the 5. Okey doke.
Yeah.
All right, so
All right.
this would be Jean-Pierre
JP.
Jean-Pierre Baldani. And your name and address, for the record, please.
Jean-Pierre Baladan, I'm the designer from Boladark Design Corp. and Embarrow Architects, 12931 Studios Ventura, on Ventura Boulevard, Studio City.
Okey doke. Thank you, sir. You have 5 minutes.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I've summed up here. After we surveyed the property, we discovered the lot is, as you see, it's tight in the front. It's about 60 feet and gets wider going towards the slope. It gets up to like 100 feet wide. In conclusion, after surveying and studying the site and the existing house, we have decided to work with the existing footprint. We have done a complete 50% calculation, and I feel very confident. I know you guys have been talking about that topic, about the 50%. I feel very confident. I met with the with the staff various times. I even asked for a sample from the city how you guys wanted to see this, because the zoning has like 5-6 lines. It's very vague. I agree with Chair, your concern about that, and it needs to be a little bit more analyze how any applicant will address that issue, because it's not very clear. It's very simple, very vague. So it's really hard for everyone to figure it out how to approach those calculations. But I did it 3 times. I have 2 sheets of papers with calculations. I went there, and I'm very confident with my number. Actually, I rounded off to 48%. And the reason that the staff feels they're nervous about it, because it's too close to the 50%. They said that if it was 47 and below, they wouldn't even question. So I recommended that I have no problem to meet with them to go over those calculations. They are free to grab their measuring tapes to go to the house and start measuring. I mean, I did it, they could do it. But I know it's a risk, and I'm taking that risk that I feel confident that's what it's the number. The existing lot is about 16,000 square feet, and we have about approximately 8,000 square feet of flat area. Even though that area, the zoning allows construct a much larger, taller house on the lot, the client desire was to stay below 3,500 and keep the height low, which we are right now right below 22 feet, where zoning allows us to go up to 35. Doesn't mean that we have to go 35 feet. And we are at 22. Also, we have been generous with the side yards, 10 feet to 15 feet side setbacks, and as we go towards the back, to provide additional relief to the resident to the north and to not block his view. Please see also my preliminary massing studies I have there, and some of the progress drawings that we did, Scheme 1, Scheme 2 on the smaller, and you could see the notes from our meetings and the recommendations or demands that the staff wanted us to do. Then you could see how we progressed with the project to come with the final design. After taking into consideration the surrounding property, we have decided to propose 2 Spanish medieval revival architecture house. I believe this is the best and only way to add to this existing house, because there's no other place to go but up. I mean, we're tied up from the back, the pool, the front. Even we had to keep those at 20 feet, even though we could go 15 feet in the towards the street. We decided to keep it at 20 feet because we don't want to disturb that 50% policy. Also, I would like to remind the commission that Ridge Road is a very short street, and I have additional pictures here. There's a lot of, I don't believe that street is very ranch-oriented architecture, and I don't think has any architectural significance. I hope you had the chance to drive by. I did so many times. I have additional pictures here. There are so many, we would say, big boxes that I'm not even crazy about it, but it's there, and it's the majority of those homes on that street. We worked diligently with the planning and met with all their demands and recommendations, such as you see on the first progress, they recommended to push back the second floor south elevation. We did it. 50% calculation, we did it. Propose a smaller window above the entrance, we did it. Propose simpler front entrance door, no iron, I agree, I don't like it either, we did it. Even though the client didn't like it, but we did it, I convinced them. Revise the roof pitch from to 312 from 412, done. Revise and reduce height of first floor windows, more horizontal, done. Complete plans and package, and I would like to submit my process, which is there. Further, I have prepared a board depicting few examples of Spanish Mediterranean Revival architectural homes that shows clearly it is okay to have vertical elements, such as tower windows. And the reason is to show that it is not wrong to use taller windows at ground level and have vertical entrances. I have the books with me. If you guys want to borrow the books, I'll be more than happy to provide it to you. For example, the staff...
Sir, if you can start wrapping up.
Yeah, I'm almost done.
Very good, sir. Thank you.
For example, the staff recommended to narrow the second floor above the entrance. That was their recommendation. As you could see, that wall used to be wider, that plane. They asked us to narrow it down and have a gable roof. Okay, fine, we did it. And then it came up, that picture that you see initially, that because of that recommendation, it created the vertical appearance. So then what we said, okay, fine, we could solve it by shifting the bottom wall inward, and by introducing corbels, that will cut down that vertical element. The 5 point that the staff recommend that we work, I don't see any reason. We worked up all those elements, except for the last 5th item, which is the landscaping. We hardly have landscaping, but also we are in talk with the landscape architect to design while we are in plan check. In conclusion, I feel it's very harsh for the staff to recommend a project in this caliber which we covered all aspects of architecture in the highest professionalism and complete with information for return for redesign versus approving with conditions. As a commissioner on the other board, if you think the design is worthy for return, then I would say that 95% of the project that I've seen in the last few years, they should have been returned for redesign. And I hope the board will review my package, and I trust your judgment, and hopefully we'll find a resolution and we could move on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Edmund Karjalian. Your name and address, obviously.
Edmund Karjalian, 828 Ridge Drive, Glendale, California 91206. Thank you. First, I would like to thank the planning department for working with us on making this project a reality. I'd also like to thank the commission for reviewing our plans, and we look forward to working with the design review board to expedite and complete this project in a timely manner. My wife and I have lived in Glendale for over 12 years, and in the last few years our family has grown. We have 2 children now, and we're looking forward to more in the future, and we simply need more living space. The existing house is very small at approximately 1,325 square feet, and we are looking to remodel it and add a second story to this property. We looked at purchasing another property, but were unable to find one that suited our needs at a reasonable price. And in this economy, we all know that we have to be very cautious with our money. We work very hard, and we would like to build our dream home at this location. The plans were customized based on feedback that we received from the planning department. We even went as far as hiring a new architect because we were not happy with the old one's design. And we're very happy with it at the current time. Thank you, JP. When redesigning this home, we took a lot of things into consideration and were sensitive with many issues such as the height of the home, its articulated floor plan, the view of our neighbor, and the privacy expectations involved. the blending into the hillside, the color scheme, the type of home style that would best be suited for this neighborhood. We listened and worked with the planning department's suggestions and recommendations and have relinquished many ideas that we originally wanted to implement on this project in order for it to be supported. Our goal is to build a quality home that will not only be an asset to our family, but one that will benefit the neighboring area as a whole. And with that, I'd like to also mention that this project will create a win-win situation for a lot of parties involved. The City of Glendale will win by receiving income from the permits. The schools will win by obtaining the funds that the project generates from the school district fees. The County of Los Angeles will win by having additional revenue from increased property taxes. The economy will win through the creation of jobs, which is what the funds of this project will generate. And the neighborhood will win through higher appraised values in the future. And ultimately, we win, our family wins, by building our dream home. We're excited about this project. We've worked very hard most of this year, and we look forward to obtaining approval in a timely manner in order to move to the next stage of the building process. That's it. Thank you all again for your consideration and helping make this project possible.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have no more speaker cards, why don't we close the public session? You know who's...
Yeah, actually, those photos were submitted by the applicant. He was showing us different homes along Ridge Drive that are not ranch-style homes and that do have a more boxy appearance. So those were included because, again, they were part of the submittal packet.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Milka. Okay. Why don't we start with Palmer?
I also agree. I've looked at the homes along Ridge, and that I don't find that a ranch style. They're more boxy. I don't think that justifies making more mass and boxiness. But in this particular case, I'm looking at the north elevation, and a neighbor from above has written a letter, and I don't be more plain and massive, and that's going to be viewed from the neighbor above. If there was a way to be more open and see-through or setback areas, I think all the effort and time that's been put into the design of this, I don't think there has been any consideration for the exterior, landscaping, driveway, entrance. And I think part of the verticality of that entrance is enhanced by wide steps going straight up to the entry. And maybe that could be resolved by changing that configuration, a different driveway material, landscaping that helps support the massiveness of the design. So I think there needs to be some coordination of the two. And maybe that, and the fact that it does look vertical is the fact that we have that large slope in the front. So if this were on a flat surface, I don't think it would be near as vertical looking. I think I'll hold off for...
Mr. Oliano, would you be able to take us?
I'm also quite familiar with that street, and I guess the main question is really the mass and scale, because when I look at this design, I look at all the drawings that have been created, and going through the sketches that I guess we're passing around, the amount of effort that's been put into this to come up with something wonderful. I have to say, I think compositionally, in terms of how things are treated, it's very nicely done. I mean, the windows, the main door with the arch and the thick arch, and potentially a wooden door. I think it says metal or wood, but I would probably sort of lean towards wood rather than metal. All the way around it, the arches in the back and the railing, all of these things have sort of been, and also the eaves, with the overhangs being clad or sheathed with either with 2x. So it's all thought out, and I like what you've done. I think the main question for this board is, really mass and the scale. And judging from what's in that street, along that street, I mean, there's a lot of mass on that street. There's a lot of buildings that have been approved, that are built, and they're not quite as nice as this one. So if we take that as a point of reference, I would say this could perhaps be the nicer looking building on that street, just the way the architecture has been treated. So I just kind of want to, start the discussion, but I'd like to hear more about what the board thinks about whether this is really so inappropriate that we need to send it back for redesign. Because unless they change, I mean, there are some things. I mean, if you look at the second floor plan, if the applicant is willing to make some adjustments to kind of meet some of the needs that have been suggested. There are some things on the second floor. For example, there's a lot of circulation space that could maybe be reduced by bringing some of the edges in a little bit just to create more breaks on the outside. But really, besides that, I think there's been a lot of effort here to try to massage and tweak this building. So I'm kind of torn because I like what you've done, but at the same time, I respect the recommendations of the of the planning department. So I like to sort of begin the discussion and see what everybody else thinks.
I bet you it's my microphone,
Yes,
so I'll start over again. This is a very steep street, and we've had many cases in the past where we've had one-story homes along a very steep street, and it's been predominantly one story. And in fact, there were cases where in the deeds of trust or going back, there were covenants that were recorded against properties that said, this is a one-story subdivision and so forth. And we had neighbors that came in that were adamant about keeping the one-story nature of that street. This street that we're judging today, that we're talking about, Ridge Drive, has gone through a transformation over the years, and there's just been an incredible precedent of very massive two-story homes that have been placed on there. And as Mr. Aliano was pointing out, some of them, in fact, are quite atrocious as I'm looking at the pictures, whereas in what's proposed and what's presented to us is actually a much more pleasant design than what's presently existing on various portions of that street. And so when I begin to assess this project, I see a hillside lot that's narrow in the front, that's wider in the back, that has an existing pool in the back, that has retaining walls along the north and the south, that has a fairly substantial setback in the front, and there's just not a lot of room to build on this thing. And so if you want to add, this is one of those situations where you almost have to go on the second story. Unless you totally redesign the first floor and push the pool out onto caissons and piles over that slope, down slope on the rear, the only place you can go is up. And so the architect, I believe, has on the second floor stepped back along the northern property line. So here's the first floor, and the second floor step back, and also along the street, the second floor steps back and saw blade kind of an action, which allows the property owner to the north to at least have some views towards the hills or downtown, and at the same time provide some relief along the property line. Now, it seems to me that if you're going to put the second story, it makes more sense for it to be on the northern side than on the southern side, because that would just look odd, I think. And the architect, I think, has spent considerable amount of time on the south elevation. In fact, the south elevation is much more worked out than the north, as Ms. Palmer pointed out as well. And so the design has some unique and typical Spanish characteristics. It has an arched entrance. It has the triple arched windows along the front setback. It has a parapet around the garage. And there's just a lot of building articulation along the street and along the front elevation. And as I start to assess the project, I believe it's a project that I could support with some minor conditions that are being discussed on this panel, such as reworking maybe those steps going up to the front entry, certainly looking at landscaping. I think that's an interesting part. That's a very interesting and vital part that's been left out. Maybe it's because you've spent so much time on design and haven't had time to address the landscape portions. But insofar as massing is concerned, I don't believe I have the same issues with massing. And so I'd like to leave it at that for now, and I'd like to hear what the rest of the board has to say.
Thank you. Now, these are interesting projects because, we have a home that's well-designed here, and although I think it can improve with respect to mass and scale. I think when you have these homes that change the architecture of an existing neighborhood that may have been originally set as single-story, split-level, shifting planes along cut sites, and then 40, 50, 60 years later, there's a new wave of design and a new wave of homes. And when they go away from that original design, there's always a reaction, whether it be the neighbor who's next to you reacting, oh my gosh, I'm going to be looking at a huge wall where I once enjoyed a very nice view. That's why I bought up here at Ridge. I'm sure that's why you bought at Ridge. And when you look at the balconies that you have in your wonderful home, you're taking advantage of that view. You're taking advantage of that reason why you're at Ridge. And there's this balance of context with the site. We have experts, staff has been working in this, since I've been here 7-8 years, they've been working on these diligently over and over again, so you see this stuff. You see this stuff over the years, and you get a sense of, it's a gut check. Does it feel good in that context? Is it pushing something, or is it just so well done in context? When you use the argument for me, well, but you know what, the neighborhood is changing, and look, they're now have built over the few years ago these big boxes. Well, certainly we can have a big box too. That isn't necessarily a good argument for me, because doing something badly in the past and continuing that bad design today is not good design. We want to execute good design. So it's not a good argument for me. I think when you look at the context and you think about where it is, and you say, I want to design something that meets the needs of the applicant, the homeowner, family's growing, you want to build something, but when you struggle with that context, the site, you struggle. You struggle, and I think this project struggles. Some may think differently, but I think it struggles. Staff, I looked at it, I went up there, when they focus on mass and scale, verticality, there's a language there that's different from the original design homes. When I look at this Spanish Revival home right here, one of the examples you gave, maybe we'll put it up a little higher. It's got a tall tower, interestingly enough. It's got a tall tower right here. But if you look at it, it's got sort of like a sloping down that hill, the roof. You can see how, stepping, sloping. It does have a mast, a turret, but it's an element, not the whole structure. When I think Ms. Palmer looking at the landscaping and the hardscaping, you think, why is this struggling, and why do I keep reading vertical? Why do I keep reading vertical? It's because also the stairs are straight up this hill, this hill, continuing to accentuate the box. Imagine if, not unlike this, you had steps that came along the side. It wouldn't be as mansion type, which I think is trying to be achieved here. Mansionization, vertical building from that. But it's working more with the site. And I think you had a good point. When you see those large steps, for me, it's not a great design. I looked at the floor plan. If you look at sheet A2.1, the second floor, as much as a fifth of your second floor is balconies, taking advantage of the views. Excellent. But when I think of what can be done with those large balconies that may not get used, and I'll show an example, and you could push some of the building massing towards that, accentuating more vista, more neighborhood, or more neighbor. Here's our second floor down here. This balcony is close to, 20, it's like almost 33, 34 feet long by maybe 12 feet. And that this large mass, as Ms. Palmer was saying, this large mass right in here, right in there, is right near the neighbor. There it is. Okay, well, I don't want to take balcony, and I'm not here to design it for you, but you got a balcony that's huge here, and the view is from these windows over to here. Why don't you take this mass, shift it right into here? They got a huge balcony, almost as big as your bedroom. Take this mass, shift it to here, and it's still got the door entry here, and take this large element, which is very big, and now you've moved it over, 16 feet, theoretically. That, to me, is working with the site. And are you really going to use that part of the balcony that much on the second floor, on a sloping lot? Well, that can be shifted. We also got a huge balcony over here. Terrific, but this balcony view is in here. Maybe you can take this element and move it downward and have it cut back into here, piggyback over here a little bit and shift it down there. Again, I'm not here to design it, but I'm looking at a design that's big in mass, and you got a second story that close to a fifth of your second floor is balconies. I love balconies. I built a balcony on my second floor 3 years ago. My wife can't believe our view, and I am out there all the time. So I'm all for it. But for me, the project is struggling, definitely in mass and scale. It's not the only way you can design this thing. I think there's opportunities, which I think staff was talking about, to make it better. And when you're finished, I think you potentially imagine this sloping in here, then this back here becomes a room. This gets shifted over here. This whole area can be brought over to here, and you're not bothering anybody, and you still get your views. So I'm good with staff in general. I think it can be a better project, and I think it deserves, especially on an important site like this, where a homeowner's going to live there forever. I think it deserves one attempt to try to bring in those elements. So, anyway. Any other comments, Mr. Eliano? I know you mentioned that you wanted to hear some comments.
Well, you touched upon something that I was also alluding to, which is that you could potentially bring in the edges a little bit, and you were very specific, and I'm glad that you were, especially in terms of the balcony in the rear. I kind of started with bedroom. I don't know what number it's the bedroom to the northwest, where some of the closet in that bathroom could maybe be shifted southerly, so you reduce some of that hallway upstairs and create another line on the exterior. I'm talking about this area here. You could actually create another line here where that kind of pushes back. But, you were saying maybe this could be pushed in, which is a good idea. Reality, I think you're right. I mean, are you ever going to use that up there, so. The balcony, to me, that's sort of, I'm not sure it does much by reducing it because there's a void there, is the balcony to the south. I suppose even if you shifted things, you can't really shift the stair. You can't shift the stair too much. I suppose you could shift it a couple of feet. There's a little bit of gap on the first floor between the edge of the stair and that wall to the dining, the guest dining. So you could bring that. I mean, there are things that you could still do to kind of keep bringing the building in a little bit. So if the applicant is willing to do that, I would say sure. I mean, I think it could make things even less massive. But in terms of the character of the way the building is designed, it doesn't really have, any. I wouldn't want them to change, the windows, for example, and all that. That's been well thought out. The arches in the front, and so for me, really, the main question is what do we do with the question of mass? Up there for right now.
Thank you. Any other?
As Mr. Insua pointed out, and I'm glad the designer brought this picture because, of all these examples, it seems as though this analog is the only one that's situated on a hill, right? So everything else is somewhat on a flat lot, whereas in this property is on a slope. And I believe, the building and the massing of the building is terraced with the sloping street, which certainly alleviates massing. And in other words, if this rotunda was here, I think it would be very odd. And as depicted on the picture next door, it would just be the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. And so what's being considered is shifting the mass from here to here, if I'm hearing everyone correctly. And I believe when we look at our perspective here, we have this smaller scale along the southern portion, which I believe is the right way to go. And I'm not sure if filling in that void is going to alleviate massing as opposed to create more massing. Now, I think it's a great idea to perhaps move this restroom, as Mr. Insua is saying, maybe right in this area, and in such a way where now the property owner to the north now has even a greater relief, maybe, oh gosh, maybe it'll be about 30 feet or so from his home, which is here, right now to here. I'm not sure what scale this is, but this is 8 scale, so but this is probably 20 some odd feet right now, maybe 30 feet right now. And so if this moved here, all of a sudden there's like a 50-foot relief, which would provide him with lots of views that way. And so I think there's some credence as to what's being discussed, but I think as part of the discussion, I'm not sure completely shifting the mass to the south is going to alleviate massing. I think it might.
You're talking about the pergola, the pergola, is that right? The little trellis area? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that area that's going to creating a void. The most impact you're going to get out of the moves that we're talking about is the one that Mr. Insua suggested, bringing that corner in.
Which could be done very easily because then the master bathroom just shifts over.
And then, a minor one is the one that I suggested, which is taking this bathroom here, and shifting it down so you create another little corner there.
So
you have a break.
Another articulation.
You have a break there. I mean, combine those two, you've already done quite a bit.
Reduce the mass.
Okay. Is there a general sense of, staff is recommending return for redesign, continue to work on the massive scale in some of the areas that they discussed in those 5 points. First question is, do we want to entertain that as a motion with other thoughts that we may have? Or do you see it as a body, a different shifting?
I think with the suggestions that have been made about relocating that mass bathroom area there, I don't think I wouldn't send something back for redesign when I think it could be worked out fairly simply. And I think it would benefit the neighbor next door, as well as we wouldn't be increasing a mass on the lower side, which I don't think any of us. And I would look to taking the comments that we've had and emphasizing that we need to change that mass in the rear portion, if that appears to be the easiest way to change it, which would seem to cost everybody involved, without sending it back for redesign.
There's a point where I know staff and planning department feels that they can handle something, and there's a point in which you want the applicant to really take a lead. Stephanie, do you have a sense on this one?
Well, thank you for asking for our input and for your thoughtful conversation. I think the staff analysis is somewhat different than what we're hearing from the board. Typically, and just to explain to the board, to the applicant, and to the audience, typically when staff does an analysis where there are any significant massing changes, that's typically something that is challenging for staff to work on with an applicant, because there's a bit of unknown and there's a substantial shift to the design. And typically that is when we do a recommendation for return for redesign, which we try not to do, and that's why we do spend so much time working with the applicant. With this project, we really struggled with that. Part of the reason that we did recommend return for redesign was because the massing changes that we analyzed are actually slightly different than the ones that we're hearing from the board. What we thought was that the verticality as presented at the street was different than the horizontality that we see on the majority of the rest of the street, with the exception of those newer boxy homes. That's what we've heard from the board in the past, and so that was how we advised the applicant. The other thing that we also want to be very clear and transparent with the board about is that the other thing that we have heard from the board is something that Board Member Simonian mentioned, which was to have the massing more closely associated with the steeper portion of the site, so that you have that more airy feeling. You have a sense of stepping the massing down towards the lower end of the site. And I think we did mention in the staff report that the applicant did make an attempt to do that, and we recognized that in our meetings and in the report. I think the reason that we were recommending return for redesign was because the verticality, the sense of verticality from the front, we believed that the project needed to be to take that, for instance, that balcony area and perhaps some of the circulation area, and push the project back, which is a less focused recommendation than the one that you're making. So getting back to your question, if your recommendation is to simply make some movements, so some of the massing at the north moves more to the center of the plan, and those are very specific recommendations, and the board is less concerned with the look of the house from the front, those very specific conditions, we can absolutely work with this applicant team. They've been very receptive to our comments and have done their best to work with us. If you believe that there are substantial changes to the landscaping and more substantial massing changes that are required, we're not certain that we would be able to manage that, because that might change the design so substantially that we're not exactly sure what you're trying to achieve. I hope that answers your question.
I'm going to just, I want, I don't want to ever come across as big poo-pooer. I want to be a realist. And I'm a builder, too, on top of an architect. I'm looking at mathematics, calculations, engineering, all those things that make your project successful. I can't see how you can retain a roof on the part over here when your top plate changes. You go from a higher plate, so that roof's got to come off from the existing home so you can build your higher roof height. I say all these things because I want you to be successful. I don't want you to go to building and safety and the guy goes, hey, I'm sorry, you've got studs that are not long enough, so you got to remove the roof to add longer studs, thus you're removing the roof. I just see this stuff over and over again, and people say, why are we not successful? Why are we not successful? Your existing house has a plate height of about 9 feet in this area. And you're going to say you're keeping that roof. How can you keep it? You got plates that are here, and you got a new roof on top of here. You got to remove that roof to put a new roof on. Want you to be successful. Anyway, okay. Yeah, of course.
Considering that we've been on this case for an hour and 15 minutes, I'd like to maybe suggest something, and I'm really glad that staff recommended that if we are specific with conditions, that staff could work with the applicant and if the conditions are specific enough.
Okay.
And Mr. Insua, I absolutely concur with you in that when, the 50% rule is so close, things happen during construction. You end up opening a wall, and all of a sudden it's full of termites, it's full of dry rot, it's full of problems, and all of a sudden, if you're so close, you end up going over that 50% so easily, and I concur.
The question, though, not to interrupt you, is that this section right here on the existing house is about 9 feet.
The audience can't see what you're drawing.
Okay, but my point is, when you see that this portion of the house that is being said that's going to stay, how can it stay when you have a new ceiling height, a new plate height? How can that roof stay when one roof is at this height and you got your new roof at that other height? I don't see
and I agree with you. And so that was suggested that, the applicant has submitted paperwork, and we have a designer that's stating that he's 99.99% or very sure that this is going to work. That said, if you go through building and safety and you go through the process and it doesn't work, it's going to be a big hassle, because now you have to come back to the design review board. You have to go through the process again. And so Mr. Insua is trying to protect the applicant and trying to, educate you as much as possible, and that watch out, right?
Be careful.
But at this point in time, I think, because we have 3 more cases in front of us, and
why don't we? I agree.
Yeah.
Why don't we get to what?
And so what I'd like to try a motion out and to see where we end up with, and of course we could always modify it and amend it and so forth. To approve the project with conditions. Number 1 is to relocate the bedroom 4, the bathroom adjacent and attached to bedroom number 4 on the 2nd floor, farther south, in order to provide relief on that northeast corner of the 2nd floor. Condition number 2 is to shift the bathroom adjacent and connecting to bedroom number 2 few feet south in order to provide further relief and articulation along the northern elevation. Condition number 3 is to rework the steps going up to the front door, perhaps accessing it from the driveway to eliminate the verticality of the entrance. Item number 4, and I should say condition number 4, is to get a licensed landscape architect to design a drought-resistant landscape plan.
Can you explain number 3? Eric?
Without really prescribing it, what I think I'm hearing and what I'm noticing is that because we have this because we have the majority of the massing of this house as illustrated in this rendering and as perceived from the street, from the sidewalk, is right around the entrance of the home. And so here is the most vertical aspect of design, and staff has pointed it out and they've identified it, and this is the issue. And so perhaps if we remove these steps, continue the landscaping, in fact have further landscaping, as Ms. Palmer indicated, along the building, then if this entrance stairs goes around and is accessed from the driveway, and we have this continual landscaping along the street, much similar perhaps with combination of this image and maybe this image here, these two images, then we'll have significantly reduced the verticality of that entrance.
Actually, Sunday, I think that's a good point. Here's what I'm thinking is because in a house like this, any house, doesn't matter, you have a driveway which might have will have cars in the driveway. And because you want this house to sort of, when people visit, you want to be able to come to it and be able to have a path to the front door without having to go around cars. What if, because I like where you're going with this, what if the main entry still stays on axis, obviously, to the front door, but they could actually design this where instead of coming in this way, you carve something at the lower end and you start doing this. So now this is all landscaping. When you come down, you're actually looking over some landscape area. So you're actually not seeing this.
There'll be a planter wall of some sort
Well,
along
there will
the
be a low
curb.
landing here. I mean, you step it basically, and then you come in, and you're actually landscaping this, so you don't come right out from the street.
Sure, there's many ways
I mean,
to do it, and in fact, that's a very positive twist to it. Because then you still have a formal entrance to the home, and at the same time, you've reduced the
But they have to do
verticality.
so. I don't know how they would do it. It may not be successful, but because I don't understand the slopes yet completely, but I suppose that could be something that could be looked at. But I see what you're saying, because the stair actually is contributing to the verticality, because now you have all this concrete plus the plaster,
Right,
and when you're looking up, you're seeing all of this stuff. Where if it, and it's actually quite appropriate given the style, where in this particular style you do kind of have meandering paths to places rather than sort of old.
Similar to, I think, a project we're going to see later, the Moreno Drive project. It has this
Yeah.
amazing path that goes up to the entrance of the house.
So that would be another item you want to put into the conditions.
I think the steps and the entrance and creating that side would create a horizontality with the planting, but I think the driveway and the entrance steps should all, the material should be compatible, so it looks like it's all one, rather than having a standard driveway, concrete, and then introducing another material.
Okay?
So those 4 conditions, I guess before we put to second the motion, that we probably need to ask staff again whether,
Well-
because we only asked for 2 conditions, now we have 2 additional ones.
Well, let me just summarize. Okay, so One of the recommendations for return for redesign is the front entrance and second floor above to reduce the vertical appearance, to modify. So we want to take that one off the list.
Which one? I'm sorry.
If you look at item number 1 of return for redesign, they say modify the front entrance and second floor above to reduce the vertical appearance. So we don't want to have that be part of the vote, if you will. Okay. Modify the design to review the overall quality, vertical, overall massing appearance. I think, our comments are providing direction there. Design should incorporate horizontal elements, so we can eliminate that because our comments are resolving that. Submit a revised demolition. That is part of the requirements, so we can leave that. That's part of the calculations.
Yeah.
And then given to the newly designed landscaping, again, we're already talking about that. So
So we're only keeping number 4.
number 4, and then the other ones are comments.
So we have 4 plus 4 that you suggested.
Mhm.
We have a total of 5 again.
Will you be able to briefly and quickly summarize what our...
On this last point, I noted that you do not want comment number 1 that we had.
Correct,
Comment number 2, strike that.
correct,
Comment number 3, strike
correct.
that.
Because we're striking in the sense because we're adding...
Right.
We're adding
Right, and I'll get to that in a minute.
deal with it.
We'll keep item number 4,
Right,
and we'll keep obviously number 5, which I've kind of embellished based on your comment.
okay.
I need to actually get Board Member Palmer's comment properly noted. Was that to incorporate a decorative driveway or? Okay.
Okay. Okay. Milka, would you be able
Okay.
to quickly tell us what you have?
What I have so far is relocate the bathroom in bedroom number 4 towards the center along the south elevation. Again, that's in order to relieve the massing in this area. Shift the bathroom adjacent to bedroom number 2 towards the south, again creating a break, thereby relieving the mass in this area. Rework the steps at the front. There was a consideration to to incorporate the some sort of meandering type steps, which integrates with the landscaping. I do also have, which I'm assuming will be obviously part of the landscape plan, which is to submit a landscape plan prepared by a licensed landscape architect, which includes drought-tolerant landscaping. Again, the plan should be California-friendly, which is identified in the LA Metropolitan Water District and the BWaterWise.com list. You didn't mention that, but I did.
Good.
And the last item, again, was Board Member Palmer's comment to introduce complementary material for the driveway and the stairs to complement and to be consistent with the architectural style of the house. Did I get everything?
I think so.
Okay.
And
Does the staff have enough direction on how far maybe that should be shifted? Do we give any kind of, just shifted enough to keep it?
If you have additional direction, because particularly the massing changes are always a challenge for us after the fact. So, in particular, the shift of the bathroom next to bedroom number 2, if there's a minimum dimension that you'd like articulation provided, then we understand that you don't want to prescribe because the architect has demonstrated to have developed a quality design already, so we understand you don't want to prescribe, but if you can prescribe some minimum dimensions, that would be helpful to us in both cases of shifting the mass.
We put maybe that bathroom, the large bathroom next to the balcony, use that dimension where the jog is, push it down to where that south, where the jog and the balcony is.
I don't follow you.
So to Are you talking about the bathroom adjacent to bedroom number 4 or the one adjacent to bedroom number 2?
Talking about moving this one down to where this jog is. Can you see that?
Oh, I see.
Down here is the minimum.
Where the northern boundary is, right where the existing jog is.
This to this, or
However they can, to create more room.
well, that would actually. I mean, I'm just making that out. This to here, then this is all along the line.
No, why don't we sit, we'll get it to you afterwards. We just need to get going.
So.
Okay.
To reiterate for all those listening, since we went behind the dais, if the southern wall of that bathroom adjacent to bedroom number 4 were shifted to where that jog in the balcony is, then that would make a straight line along the north elevation, which is undesirable. So I think the condition is that the northernmost edge of that bathroom should be shifted a few feet south of the northern face of that closet so that you have that staggering effect. And shall we say 18 inches, 2 feet, 3 feet? What's the sense?
Something that works. It may be tight.
I think we're getting. I mean, I'm sorry that I even mentioned that, but because what happens is if they shift and it doesn't work, then you have to play. I think. I mean, I know that you want specific, but if you were to, once you shift that corner, that mass at the corner, that whole thing comes down. We could say plus or minus, try to align it with that notch, or it might get longer, it might get shorter, but because I think we need to give the architect some.
Do we agree that we want it to be south of the wall of the closet?
You mean you're talking about this closet here, right?
Yes.
Well, it could even. I don't know. See, I don't know.
Okay.
It could be if it aligns with that, then like you said, you have a straight wall.
My problem, as you can see here, is that we're spending a lot of time trying to design it, and that's not our job.
Yeah, I agree.
Guys, when I read a letter here from the neighbor, the proposed second floor will block my view significantly. I've enjoyed it for almost 20 years, and then we're here trying to design it. That's wrong. It's their project. We give them ideas. We don't measure 16 feet, 12 feet. We give them a sense of what we think will improve the project, and then the applicant shows that.
I agree.
It's wrong for us, in my opinion, it's wrong for us to start doing all this, especially on a project that's so sensitive to the neighborhood and what it's going to do to the adjacent neighbor. Let them successfully take our comments, show a success, and when we see it, it gets approved on grease lightning. We've been on this project for almost an hour and a half, and we'll be here all night. But that's when projects struggle, and it's not our job to do that. Our job is to review, comment, and then give direction.
I agree with you.
So I apologize, but it's
But
just...
there's no need to. I agree with you. I think what we're getting at is that if we don't want to see it again, I think the interest of staff is to get as much direction as possible. So if we feel like we're giving them enough, that's why I thought we should ask staff again if they feel comfortable. I'm okay with that.
okay. No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eliano.
My pleasure.
So we have a condition out.
Okay.
We have a motion out with conditions.
We do have a motion on the floor, is that what I'm understanding?
Correct.
Yeah, we did.
By Board Member Simonian. That's
Yes.
what I thought I had
Okay.
heard.
So if we're happy with that, I'm going to second that.
Okay, so it sounds like there is no clear specification as to how many feet
Correct.
back we need to have the applicant needs to set back that bathroom. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then the original condition that I stated and worded to relocate the bathroom inward, et cetera, stands without the additional comment that we were starting to hear earlier. Okay, I will strike that. So we have a motion by Board Member Art Simonian, and do we have a second?
I just second that.
Second by Board Member Aliano, and this will be roll call to approve the project with the condition. Board Member Simonian.
Yes.
Board Member Aliano.
Yes.
Board Member Palmer. Chairperson Sua.
No.
Motion carries 3-1.
Okay, why don't we keep moving for the next project, which is case number 1, PDR 2010-045-A, street address 1234 Dorothy Drive. And Mr. Baxter, I think it's your project, correct?
That is correct, sir.
All righty, why don't we have the staff presentation?
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Chair, members of the board, as mentioned, this project is located at 1234 Dorothy Drive. The project proposal is to construct a brand-new house, just under 2,800 square feet, single-story, and it will be a contemporary architectural style, a brand-new house. It's located in a single-family flatland neighborhood, our R1 zone. And so let me go real quickly through the area, the neighborhood. It's over in the western side of Glendale, not the furthest west, but is in the western side of Glendale. I'll give you some photos if anyone photos of the area. You can see in our location map, it's on the eastern side of Dorothy Drive. We have our site plan, floor plans, roof plan. We have some elevations that list the different materials, color board materials. We have our landscape plans and our elevations, material board perspectives. The project is located in a woodland neighborhood. There's several types of neighborhoods. This is the San Rafael district. It's relatively compatible with the other homes in the neighborhood when you look at that comparison of the neighborhood. And when we look at the site planning, which consists of the lot coverage, landscaping, parking, and privacy, the planning staff felt that the project was very consistent with the neighborhood and with the intent of the design guidelines. We did have a condition to make sure that all plants are consistent with the Be Water Wise plant palette that's required by the city at this time. In our next category, the mass and scale, again, staff felt that the building and roof forms and recessed wall articulations appear consistent with the homes in the neighborhood. And the last category, which is our design, texture, and quality materials, staff again felt it was very consistent. We had some minor concerns relating to the trellises, that they should be reoriented, and we have that noted as a condition there. And we also have a condition to make sure that all the details that they work with staff, just to make sure all the details are going to be consistent with the quality of the house that they're proposing. And so that makes 3 conditions: the landscaping one, the one with the trellises, and the one with the construction details the staff will work with. We had a 4th condition. It's one where right around the pool they have a lot of trees, and we felt that, at least the staff person felt that the trees would be shedding leaves and all in the pool, and I just have a feeling based on my experience with this that those trees are going to be asked to be moved out of there when the applicant understands what he's actually saying. So we thought that we put it into consideration, maybe they relocate them to a different part of the site and use a different thing. That pretty much sums up this staff report. I can take more time, but I know that board members are in a hurry, and so
No.
trying to accommodate.
You do. Well,
You know how you-
very good. Thank you, Mr. Baxter. We're not in a hurry. We just, thank you. Any questions for staff?
And I did pass out photographs, sir, in case you wanted to take them.
Okay. Why don't we have our speakers? I have here the applicant, speaker name Ara Nats. Forgive me, it's a tough one. My name's tough too, so thank you, sir. Your name and address, please, sir.
Good evening. My name is Aram Manatsakanyan. I'm an applicant of this project, 910 South Lenox, Bourbon, California, 91502.
Welcome, sir.
I'm an applicant of this project. Actually, whatever Chris Baxter says, so he already explained the project. Only about the trellises. I mean, there is one of the conditions that they want to change the direction of the trellis rafters in order to get shade from the direct sunlight. But basically, trellis we are trying to use it as an element which one gonna hold the vine whatever gonna make shade on that outdoor spaces. I mean, trellis not only have to make shade himself, he's gonna hold the vine whatever is grows next to that. If you see in the renderings, I had to show it. And also the colors and the materials we use, the earth colors actually, more to be consistent with the relief. And if you have any questions, I'm gladly to answer your questions.
Yes, sir. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Good presentation. Thank you, sir. We have another applicant.
Mr. Rinso, I'm going to recuse myself. Project was owned properties within 500 feet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. The next applicant is Egg Carp. Very good. So, all right. Any questions we have for the applicant? Okay. Well, why don't we have the public session of the presentation closed? Mr. Aliano, why don't you start us?
We're going to do that. Okay. You know, I whenever I see a brand new house being designed, I always wonder, because really there's quite a few possibilities, and I feel that this project is limiting itself. You know, planning-wise, when you look at the plan, which translates into elevations and massing, there are probably things in the plan that could be done in such a way where your massing could be a little bit more interesting. I think there's a good attempt here at doing something really nice. I can see that in the color elevations. You know, you're trying to introduce stone and hopefully quality windows as trellises and things like that. But the style of this house is odd, I think. You know, it sort of brings together a variety of roof shapes that, you know, gable roofs and shed roofs and then the way they intersect, you know, the fenestration, for example, on the main elevation and the one at the bottom, for example, these punch windows on top, or maybe those could be a little more, a little bit lighter rather than punch openings. Maybe it could be a real true clear story where you might have just verticals at the structure and you have a lot of expansive glass there rather than just punch openings. It could come together. I mean, I could see that elevation really being very striking, you know. I'm talking about this area here. Instead of these being punch openings, you know, consider this as being a complete glazed area, you know, that starts to introduce some vertical elements. Because you already have introduced a nice language here of these, you know, pieces that have a rhythm. You know, even the way you treat that. So I'm a little bit confused, and not confused, but not drawn to this too much. You know, when I see stuff like that, you know, a ridge with a uneven, what are we trying to do here? I mean, then how do you sort of combine those two together really create contrast that we're trying to create, trying to make these elements sort of joined together. It's not doing that for me. So I think in terms of general size of the house and the location on the lot, I have no issues with. I just think there really needs to be a series of three-dimensional studies of this massing. And you've already attempted here. I think you're doing these studies and that study, but this relationship worries me. I mean, it doesn't feel very sort of well worked out. I mean, why should these break? And I'm not sure. I just don't know where this is trying to go. What is it trying to say? So I would. I really want to see what others have to say about it, but right now I'm tempted to sort of have another look at this.
Okay. Thank you.
I agree with the comments. I like the materials that are used. I like the attempt that's being made, but I think some of those roof lines and that south elevation do need help. Landscape. The site today, and notice that the landscape. Palm trees that I don't think have been addressed in the landscape and might conflict with the proposed trees on the south side. And the east side. And some of those place to that five-story look from behind, because this is a little one-story house and it's going to be overpowered by that.
Okay. You know, it's interesting because when you look at the colored renderings and stuff, they're very pleasant as far as the contemporary design. But when you think about the overall execution, I agree with you, Mr. Aliano, that some of the things can seem to be a good idea, not fully vetted, not fully executed. Does that mean it's bad design? No, I think it's kind of interesting. Got the two roofs. I mean, it's funny because over the years we see projects that I think fall shorter than this one. They get approved. So anyway, my feeling is when you look at the contemporary design, it's a nice direction, it's an interesting approach, but maybe in the execution it needs some work. Maybe staff can work with this applicant, and because staff recommended it with approval, maybe we can tweak some of those areas, give direction of some of those areas, and staff could help them. So, anyway.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, I think, guess for me, what I'm hearing is that we should move forward with some recommendations, some comments. I would really like to see more fenestration on this elevation. I would like to see this more open. Instead of punch openings, maybe it could be a sort of just a big glazed area with verticals. And then I really would like to see a better resolution of these roofs. And I don't know if this is general, too general, or you don't have enough information.
A little bit more information about where the problematic points are. I'm sorry, I stepped out of the room for a moment while you were talking.
I agree with Mr. Inson about the comments he made on the previous project, where I don't think we should be prescriptive. I'm all for that. So the moment we start saying, put a pitch here and pitch there, we're doing that. So what I'm saying is, as a comment, I would say the roof has to be worked out. It's not fluid enough. It's not it just doesn't work well as a whole. You have to decide whether it's all shed roofs or maybe it's all gables. But I don't. The way it is right now, it's not working. And there's also a very strong sort of graphically in terms of, to me, this image here feels like you have a house and you're just splitting it down the middle with these two roofs that are not joined. So, and I don't know what the solution is. Maybe this pitch needs to go the other way. I don't know. It's a lot of stuff. I mean, this looks kind of nice. I like the way these planes kind of fold into each other because that elevation is actually successful. The way these planes do that. So I don't know. I don't know if we have enough to sort of give you.
I thought what we thought was reasonably successful about the project and the roof lines was that it's a fairly simple design with the living room and dining room area popped up into a different shed roof that sort of interrupts the gable roof. And so to that end, we thought it was kind of a clear enough architectural concept that it could hold up in its own way. If the board believes that the strong sort of graphic sense of that interruption, that sort of roof line interruption at the front or west elevation is too strong and should be ameliorated, that's something that we could work out with the applicant, that perhaps there's some overlap of the roofs. So, for instance, the taller piece maybe has a longer eave, and the shorter piece maybe crosses over that interruption, for example, so that sort of softens that elevation, if you will. I guess the only reason that typically we understand what it is you're wanting so that we know how to work with the applicant. In this case, because we saw the strong sort of conceptual idea, kind of a very simple diagrammatic idea of that roof, because we didn't have similar design issues with that. We just want a little bit of information about where the problems lie, and then we can take it from there. And then, if I might add, to the execution piece, we have that concern as well. And so condition 3, what we did was put into that condition, and I'll read it out for you: submit construction details to be clearly indicated on the plan for staff's review, including trellis and fascia boards, stone veneer and caps, stucco channels, stucco applications, smooth and machine-applied finishes, exterior doors, particularly the entry door, railing and aluminum windows, to ensure that construction will be consistent with the plan submitted and approved by the board. So we thought that was specific enough that we could be able to work with the applicant to ensure that the execution of the design was that kind of neat package that you're seeing in the colored elevations.
I'd like to also say that the comment that staff had regarding pieces to horizontal, I don't think that would look well because the trellises aren't deep enough to create and it would, I think the way they are shown would look a lot better. It gives a little more to the design rather than keeping everything horizontal.
Okay. So my notes that I was taking here was item 1 from Mr. Aviano. When you look at the west elevation, try to restructure, realign for better fluidity of the front roof lines, those two edges, try to get those working better. Comment number 2, the south elevation for those windows, to, instead of punched windows, to maybe be larger bands of windows all across the top. And then the 4 comments here we have from staff, except the horizontal trellis, or the trellis changing. We can try that. You get those, Mr. Baxter?
Yes, yes. There was one, though. It said something about the existing trees, large trees at the east property line. The east property line is the
south.
buildings on the east property line. I know which one you're referring to. Oh, yes, that, but I thought you wanted some kind of between
East side. All screening trees.
That's consideration or requirement? They had the pool back to this.
So is that a condition to have a landscape buffer at the rear of the property?
Necessarily.
Okay, so it's a consideration. And then your comment about the Canary Island pines in the...
They seem to conflict with the proposed landscape plan that doesn't even address them, so
Okay,
needs to be shown on the plan and then trees adjusted.
okay, so maintain the existing trees and adjust the landscape plan.
The existing ones are going to be taken out or not. I just wanted to bring it up.
Okay.
That they're there.
So, so the canary pine, or the large trees on the palms. On the south, yeah, elevation. Okay, should be taken in consideration. Keep them. They need to be. Yes. Okay. That's coordinated with the.
Okay. Do we have a first? Or
I had another comment, actually. I'm just looking at these. I'm just wondering, to kind of solve some of these, like, I mean, is there any reason why couldn't we have the ridge? Why couldn't this be sort of an even ridge, which would give you more space here, between that. Once you bring the ridge here, this actually comes down. You have more surface there. And then it makes sense, because now you have basically a house with a gable roof, and you're bisecting this house with this shed roof in the middle. Conceptually, it's very strong. So if we're in agreement with that I think could work. This is a little misleading, because this is actually way in the back.
right. It's
And, there's no reason why they should be, I mean, conceptually, they could be on the same height. Maybe it's done just to make this elevation look better, but there's no reason why this roof should be higher than that. In fact, it's better that they're all the same, so it looks like it's part of the same thing. And then the other thing, that if we're going to kind of leaning towards creating an expansive glass area here with verticals, so you basically, the verticals are mullions made out of maybe wood, not stucco. Then you have glass, maybe you have window with verticals at each one of these, and bring it to the corner. So when you look from this direction, you see the shed roof and then it wraps with glazing. I think you get a good sense of openness when you look from that angle. You get to see the rafters. Maybe you have exposed rafters in that room. I think it could be very dynamic. Since we're doing that here, why not do it here as well? This is the front entrance to the house. When you're approaching it, right now you have a plane, a dead wall that ends at the bottom of that eave. You could, even though there's a closet behind this wall, there's no reason why you couldn't have clear story here and just have a slope plane above that closet, so you get this really wonderful light coming into that room, while still sort of activating that part of the house. Right now it feels dead. I mean, you come in and everything's sort of, it's right here. I mean, I think it would be much nicer to have that opened up, because then conceptually you have the same thing here as you have on the other side, and these things are kind of joined. So, I mean, it's a very quirky design. I mean, I can't really categorize into anything, but if you make these kinds of adjustments, you know, it starts to feel a little more.
You got those?
That's right. I think I got it. Or I can also watch the tape.
Yeah, I think we understand that. One question that I have about a previous recommendation on the south elevation, Mr. Aliano, when you mentioned the more fenestration on the south elevation, you immediately talked about the clear story. Would you also like additional fenestration on those walls because they're all very solid, or you don't have a preference either way?
You know, I'm okay. I mean, the way they're represented right now, they look like they're popping out of the plane, but I know that's not true.
Okay.
They're going to be. I don't know if these. I mean, if you're going to have punch openings, they should read like punch openings. They shouldn't be flush.
Okay. So we can include that as a comment that any punched opening should be recessed.
You know, maybe a couple of inches back, whatever it needs to be.
Okay, but the pattern and size of the fenestration on the south elevation below the clear story is okay as long as the punched openings are detailed as recesses.
I read these as punch.
Right.
These are actually, they're still punch, but they have the stone that kind of helps a little bit.
Okay.
Same thing here. I mean, they should all be slightly recessed, I think.
Right. Except for the clear story, I think.
Right. That's,
Yes.
Yeah, that's meant to look like a void.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you. I think that's sufficient for us.
In a motion?
I have several. So, about 9 conditions, minimum. Okay. We have a motion for?
We have a motion for,
Well, I move for approval with the conditions stated.
Says Mr. Aliano. We have a second. Roll call. For Aliano.
Yes.
yes.
Approved with.
Why don't we take a 3-minute break?
bells are gaily ringing, ding dong happily reply, the angels all are singing, Gloria, Hosanna in excelsis. Hosanna in excelsis.
Okay, we're open again for business, if you will. The next project is case number 1 PDR 2010-049-A. The project address is 1515 Moreno, and we're ready for our staff presentation. Mr. Baxter.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, next project, as you mentioned, is at 1515 Moreno Drive. The project is a 154 square foot addition to the entry foyer, which faces a street, and a remodel of the existing house to bring it back towards its mid-century modern style. That is the proposal presented to us. The scope of the work, and let me go through these plans real quick. Let me just back up for a second. Over here, I've listed or presented the existing plans. So you have some floor plans and your elevations. Here is where the new project begins with our site plan, street, front entries right there. Floor plans have a perspective, elevations, you have some section views. This is that parapet element, there's a little section view there. This is a photograph back from the street. You can see it's a very deep setback, about 76 feet to where the little entry will be added right there. We have some photographs here. To the board members. And we also have some, here's our colors and materials, a section view of the windows, detail of the doors, and this is the trellis element here. The project is located in the hillside zone, R1R. It is surrounded by other homes in the R1R zone. It is immediately adjacent to the Royal Boulevard Historic District to the south of it. However, this project is one lot over from it and not a part of it, and staff has reviewed and discussed this with our staff here, our historic preservation staff, and it's not considered a historic resource or part of that area, or should not be considered part of that area. The neighborhood comparison shows that the proposed house and the adjacent homes are very similar in character. We look at the site planning, the mass and scale and design characteristics. The things that we'd like to point out is that the site planning, we feel, is very consistent with the intent of the guidelines and with the neighborhood. In the mass and scale category, we do feel that there is some inconsistencies with the raised parapet roof at the east elevation and the solid safety wall for the new balcony above the front entry. We feel that it adds to the massing, this kind of this conflicting forms here, and this here, it creates a little bit of a massing. So we have some conditions, hopefully, to try to lighten that up. This is a reference to what the front would look like in terms of the roof form without the parapet. You can see in the background the parapet kind of dies right here. It just dies at that point, so it doesn't wrap similar to this. It dies to the back of the chimney area here, but this is what it would look like without that form. And as far as the architectural styles, I pretty much have touched on that, these conflicting forms and the massing. The windows are another large change, which staff has, we didn't have a problem with. We felt that the windows work well with the project. And our conditions, we just have two conditions. The first condition is to remove the parapet. We felt the parapet at the very rooftop up there does increase the massing, and then to change the solid wall for the balcony into cable rails in this area right here. Try to give it some lightness as opposed to mass area. Other than that, pretty much wraps up the report. I can go into more detail again.
Any questions?
Sure.
Mr. Baxter, could you clarify what staff means by the parapet that needs to be eliminated?
Sure.
You alluded to it. I think I understand staff's points on the entrance, and
Yes.
that you want horizontal cables from what I remember reading, but is something about the parapet dying at a chimney?
Yes. There's the chimney back here. But when you look through here, you can see the dash line behind it right there, the little piece right there. So the parapet stops at the edge of the house. It doesn't die into the chimney, but it's, from here, it looks like it does. So you just have a parapet wall here, and it doesn't wrap back along this side like it does right here. So the roof forms. So in other words, right here, where the parapet comes like this in the front, wraps, comes down, then it stops right there. See, and here's your chimney, so basically it stops, and it does not wrap here like it does here.
Right.
So if you want to see what the staff recommendation would look like without this parapet, this would be the example right here. That would be the roof form on the front, right there. In fact, you can see the dash lines. The extended eaves look fine. It's just that parapet we felt was a bit heavy. Is that okay, sir? Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Baxter?
One question regarding the east elevation
Yes, ma'am.
has some doors right where that underneath.
Those are windows, ma'am.
Well, those are windows.
Yes.
Because it says new entry.
Yes, that would be correct. The entry is right there.
No, but it says new entry where, right,
Well, I guess what they're referring to is that this form right here is this form right here, which is this form right here.
but those are windows, they're just.
Yes, those are going to be windows.
Round
You can see it even right here on the floor plan. It says new entry, but
I know, that's where I was confused.
yes, I fully understand. That form
Got it.
right there is the entry.
Baxter,
Absolutely.
if that parapet is removed, would you just have a very gentle sloping roof then? Is that the idea?
That was
Where
the
the eave,
you talking about here? Yes. You can see it back right through here. In fact, no, I don't have it
on the roof plan
Yes.
perhaps?
Yeah, it would still be, you'd still have
Same roof.
the roof. In fact, see, here's your roof. Right here. It just comes right out like this.
I see.
So the eave would be there. You can see it comes out like that.
Like the west of it.
Yeah, so that's why I kept referring to that west elevation. It gives you kind of an idea what that would look like.
And originally the house
Oh,
had
yes.
a complete void on that side.
This was
There
the
one big.
well. What they're trying to show here, and the applicant, yes, the applicant actually has some good information, but it shows this is what it looked like back when it was constructed in 1941. So you have, and there was an addition, just under 1,000 square foot addition, which filled in this portion here, which is this right here. And they felt it was just kind of out of character right over here with what this was. And so they're trying to bring that back to this, but they have an addition right here. See, so they're having to work with that existing addition.
And it seems as though they're doing quite a bit of window work as well.
Oh, lots?
Yeah.
That's correct. Yes, that in the staff report it notes that there's all around the house windows, lots of windows.
And it's, what type of windows are they? Do you know, or should we ask?
Yes, well, we have here, and we have my, but I have a plan, oh, here you go, sir, here you go. I had this up, here's our, a little bit cumbersome, but here's our window schedule. I can pull that apart for you. But there you go. That's the applicant noted block frame with sills. This would be your windows. It says here wood casements, so I believe they're going to be wood casements. But he can also go into detail on that as well for you.
Okay, okay.
And I
you.
can pull that apart and put it up there.
I don't know if that's necessary. It seems as though they're all wood casement.
And again, this is the detail.
section which shows it all in here.
Shows the sections right here. This is the door for details, and here's the trellis concept here.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for staff? All right, well, why don't we have the consultant project manager on the project, Ms. Yukon. And you've requested to have 3 minutes.
Yes.
Where the normal.
Thank you,
and then
Mr.
the,
Chair.
designer will take 5, so 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing that. Good evening, Shoik Yepremian with Yepremian Consulting, representing the new property owners at 1515 Moreno Drive, who have bought the property in February of this year, so they are new residents, or they will be new residents in this neighborhood. The house definitely needed some alterations, modifications, both in the exterior and the interior and exterior. The proposed project, as Chris described, is located in the Rosmoyne neighborhood off of Royal Boulevard. The existing single-family house is 3,052 square feet on a fairly large-size house, lot, 22,000 square feet. The applicant is proposing to add 154 square feet to the front of the house facing Moreno Drive. As you can see from the pictures and the site plan, that the house sits up approximately 76 feet away from the front property line. Excuse me. Vehicular access is from Orozco Drive off of Las Flores, if you can look at the location map, which serves as a back alleyway. The garage is located off of Orozco Drive, so the only access to the house from Moreno is pedestrian access. The lot is not within the newly created historic district, but right behind it. The house was built in 1940s, very similar in characteristics, architectural details, along with the rest of the neighborhood. The project also includes new stucco paint, new windows, and some architectural fenestrations. I would like to go on record and indicate that I have highlighted 11 properties. I wanted to do some neighborhood outreach since the property owners are new to this neighborhood, and also I wanted to inform the neighbors what type of work they were proposing. So I targeted 11 properties, all of the properties on Moreno Drive, and immediately back of this property facing Royal, as well as the street behind. 3 of the neighbors that I spoke to supported the project. One neighbor even sent me an email. I have also contacted the Homeowners Association, and I do have an email from him as well. At the time that I sent him the email, he indicated that they neither supported the project nor opposed it. I would like to turn those 2 emails to staff as part of the record. And I do have the project designer present, and he would like to cover and discuss the project in details. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, and the designer is Mr. Scott Brown. Your name and address for the record.
Yes,
please.
Scott Brown, 1444 Poppy Peak, Pasadena, California.
You have 5 minutes.
Great. And if I could just pass, because I tried to address these points as quickly and efficiently as I can. And I'll walk you through this small package as an explanation of why we've opted to go the route we have. First off, the property was built by Adrian Wilson, who was a pretty well-known local architect in the early 1940s. When he designed it with that one corner, which was pointed out where the shed roof meets the gable, as a second-story balcony. There was a squared-off solid balcony. That is indicated in the 3rd page. Those 2 photographs are the house as it originally appeared. There was a trellis over the windows in the corner of the house, on that entire corner of the house. One of the elements that we're proposing to replace. There was a series of very bad remodels and additions. That was removed. This addition enclosed the upper balcony. Another patio in the back of the house was closed off. And basically, windows were altered so that there were some metal, some vinyl, some original wooden casement windows, and just pretty much a hodgepodge. So one of the things that we're proposing is to go back to the all wooden windows, dual glazed because of current energy guidelines, but entirely consistent with one another, so they're not multiple styles and designs. The stucco on the house was altered to a very, very heavy textured stucco, which was not at all part of the original. We're proposing going back to a lightly sanded, which was the original texture of the house. There are large windows that are shown in these original photographs that were actually removed and reduced in size. So although we are proposing to add some new windows, we're also proposing to go back to the original size in the living room, dining room, and certain other areas of the house where the windows were actually reduced over the years. The following page, which would be the fourth, I believe, yes, shows the small elevation of the front of the house with what we're proposing. And let me just explain where we went, because I do understand that this board and the city planning and all, who I appreciate working with very much, are very sensitive to the massing of the house. So we've reintroduced the horizontal elements of the trellises, the larger windows, the horizontal lines of the windows. And what we've proposed with the parapet wall is to camouflage, to cover that really poorly added craftsman or country-style roof line that was never the intention of the original architect and not consistent with the style or the era of the house. The following page shows how the house would look if we were to leave that roof line as it currently is. And I also have included opening up the railing over the proposed foyer, which would be the small balcony at the front of the house. So it gives you an idea of how the house would look if we do not go with what we are proposing.
And you're comfortable with that?
No.
This is not?
What the following page, which is
East elevation 2.
Yeah.
As an example, you're not in love with it?
Not at all. No,
Okay,
no.
okay.
That roof line is not consistent with the intention of the original architect and not consistent with a mid-century modern home.
Okay.
The following sheets, I've shown you examples of that roof line where it is consistent with a farmhouse or a craftsman home. 4 pages of those examples, and then there are a series of examples where I've noted whether it's a general feel of the house or the specific elements as to railings, balconies, masses that were the inspirations for the design that we came up with. The owner's entire intention on this project is to actually restore the house to the quality and the look it originally had. So the research, I did meet actually with the original architect's daughter, and who we discussed the plan. She now lives in La Cañada, Flint Ridge, and she was very much of the intention that the goal and the direction we were going were exactly what her father would have intended, had that additional square footage just been there. So not willing to eliminate square footage that's in the house, our best direction is to try and create lines that would be consistent with what the original house had.
If you can, go ahead, if you want to wrap up some.
Well, basically, those are the points, is that we're really just trying to be consistent. We're trying to camouflage a very ugly roof line without removing that portion of the house. And we're trying to add the 154 square foot foyer because the general layout of the house doesn't have a formal entry. And also what that would do would be create a small balcony off the front bedroom that would reflect the balcony that was originally at the corner of the house, and doing it in exactly the same style as the architect had done it originally.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the applicant while he's there?
Yeah, I do actually. Trying to understand the plan, because what you're showing here, there's actually a line there.
Yes, we're adding 6 inches, we're furring out 6 inches so that we could separate that element and
So
reduce
is that-
the mass.
You have to speak into the microphone, or you could come up
Or you
here.
could come up
Yeah,
here.
when you come up.
Maybe if I
right.
come up here. it would
Yep,
be easier.
yep.
That way, there's microphones and people at home could hear you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm trying to understand this. So is this plane?
This is furring out.
That's this plane.
Exactly. And so that's this line right here. So what we've done is, rather than having one entire mass, we've furred this out 6 inches so that there is a stepping and a shadow that's created. Currently, actually,
And you're saying this is the,
that,
and that was the original.
that was the original house in 1945. Currently, this is that elevation, and you see what a horrible massing that facade is with that poorly added on upstairs bedroom. So where this is
Yes, yeah.
was originally that balcony that was actually stepping. And where this trellis was that also gave a horizontal line.
But the chimney
there
is
currently
in the
nothing.
same plane, right?
The chimney is not. It's just slightly stepped back.
But this shows on the same plane.
Well, it actually is very slightly. It's about 6 inch when you actually measure it step back, which is what inspired stepping forward 6 inches from this so that we'd have a foot difference between the new and the chimney. So there would still be that stepping.
And have you tried any studies where actually, instead of, step it the way you have it, but is it possible for I don't know what chimneys, if it can be expanded, and perhaps if you try to study where the parapet is actually lower, and now you have, this is all one plane. In other words, you could bring this line further out, like that. And now you're bringing the plane of the chimney, and these are all one, so that you have, I don't know, it's a study that I don't know if you've done or not, because I think what's nice about this, and it's not nice about this, is this line. I like this distance, quite different than that. But the moment you engage the chimney with this plane, this piece itself becomes a nice sort of holistic corner. And then you have the original gable behind it. And I think if you were to take this line out and you make this read, that's what you would get. But you don't have that yet, because the chimney you're saying is now a foot back.
Right.
So
No, that would be a simple thing that I don't think would actually alter the intention of what we're trying to accomplish.
I think that works nicely if that line were not there.
The other thing I do want to mention that Chris and I did discuss, because he did bring this to our attention after this was submitted and we've reworked it, is that we intend to wrap the parapet on the other side. The reason it was never included to begin with is unless you're in a helicopter, you can't see that side of the house. It's at the top of a hill, and there is no hill that's higher looking down on it. So rather than put the expense into doing it, since no one could ever see it, we didn't include it. But it's not to say that we've now, with our drawings, actually continued that around.
Okay.
Can you show where the furring on the second floor plan
Yes.
is that
Excuse me.
you're referring to?
This line right here, that's a blocking and furring.
So that should be that.
No, that's not it. That's a dashed line. This line here is the solid with the blocking on the ends.
He's saying, I don't know that you show, because you're saying that there's actually more plane shown here, but you're saying that there's actually a little wing. I don't see that wing here.
No. This is just furring straight off of this line and stepping back here. That's this line right here. And it's dashed line in here. Right there.
Right, but this reads as a plane. Where here, there's no plane here.
It is. That line right there is a plane.
Okay, well,
Is it
why was
below?
To me, it reads different, but I
Is
think
it-
I know what you're saying.
Is it on the floor below, and that these are new walls that are? Because it looks like that furring is on the floor below, but it doesn't look like this bedroom mass is in front of the bedroom, too, is not in front.
It steps over. This is the end of the corner bedroom. This is the dash line that indicates the room on the interior.
Okay.
And this is the other room begins on the other side of it. So that furred out wall actually extends beyond the wall of bedroom number 2 into the front of bedroom number 3.
You see the confusion. It looks like there's it's one plane and that there's one wing. So is the wall of the bedroom, the exterior wall of the bedroom here, or is it here?
It's the solid wall here. The window line is there. The windows are actually stepped.
So technically, I think you would have a line
Yes.
here.
On each side of that.
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
It's just a
So
drawing.
it's
Yeah.
not drawn.
Yeah, and that'll all be
Okay.
corrected, obviously, as the process.
Okay, that's all I have.
Yes.
Seeing a line here, sir?
On either side of the windows. Actually, I think we did actually in the office already alter
All
that.
right.
Yeah,
So this should all be solid.
right. There's a double blocking,
Oh.
yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yes. Very good.
All right, thanks.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
That should do it. Actually, this is a collage that you created?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, very good. All right, thank you.
All right.
Very nice, Mr. Baxter. Okie dokie.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I think we're done with the comments. Right, why don't we close the public portion of it? Mr. Mooney, why don't you start us project?
Well, I'd like to start off by mentioning that we certainly appreciate this package. It's not often that we get a holistic package that includes the history behind a project and what the original architect had thought of, the pictures, and in fact, if it was published at that point in time, what the intent of the architect was. And so as we start looking at these and assessing these historic homes, it's always nice to get that sort of a historic perspective on it, which certainly helps both the architect in design and also the board in assessing the design. And the overall orientation of this home is so unique because it's set back so far from the street. And so, you arrive at the street, and now you have to go up all these steps to get to it, and it's some 75 feet or somewhat set back. And so it really has this feeling of being on its own on top of this knoll, let's say. And currently, the overall massing of the home is not that appealing. When you look at the curb side appeal to it, you have these wonderful steps that go up, and then you have this house that really deserves to be renovated and repositioned and taken care of. And so I appreciate the fact that the current owners are doing just that and getting the help from professionals that guide them in doing that. So I thought that was worthy of mentioning. Overall, the study that's presented to us in that some of the roof lines that are more characteristics, let's say, of a craftsman farmhouse or just a regular farmhouse or even a cottage or perhaps even a ranch, and the roof lines that are presented in these, I guess, studies are of course wildly different than what's present over there. Currently, it's a very unique home. It's a different home, so it's hard to judge and pinpoint how one should approach this. But I keep on going back to the existing pictures of the house as it was constructed back then in the 40s. And there, in fact, was a solid parapet around that balcony. And I think that's such a dominant feature. And so when we look at this picture here, you have this plane that's continued, but it's broken up with this positive and negative space. But what is really emphasized is a solid parapet and then a very light trellis of some sort, sunshade, whatever that might be. And so I think what's presented to us currently in this design has traces of that original intention, whereas on the east elevation, on the east elevation, we have the parapet, which is very similar to the original parapet, and although there's a void originally, the building has been redesigned and it is what it is, so the architect's at least trying to create a separation and articulation by furring it out, and I think that's positive. I also think Mr. Aliano's suggestion of integrating the chimney into this plane certainly will help it. But overall, this modest addition of some 140 feet, which gives it a nice entrance, I think is compatible, and I believe it'll create a nicer entrance to the home. And overall, I think the redesign of the windows that is presented with these high quality windows, with the wood sills, the way they're recessed, I think is a positive addition to the house. And so I'd love to hear others on the board, but I'm excited about the project.
Thank you. Ms. Palmer?
Well, I wish we could see more of the house from the street. Because you can't see it from the driveway, you can't see it from the street. I like the new design. Questioning the railings. You've got the horizontal trellises and things, and then all of a sudden we have these vertical railings, and I'm not sure if some of the railings are left out on some of these stairways just for picture, or I would just suggest that if they're going to have the horizontal element of the trellises, that maybe the railings match that. The other comment I have is it's a beautiful brick winding walkway up the front, and I noticed the old house had brick planters and things. I don't know if there's any attempt do we just go from a brick entry and steps to a house that doesn't reflect any of that material or not. I'm not sure about that. And the other comment I have is we've made a great effort to revise this house, and when you look at the front, you see just the top of the house, but there's just the lawn area, an old wood wall, retaining wall. I think there could be something in the wood retaining wall maybe replaced to match the brick entryway, and maybe some planting out there, because it's basically now you're looking at the top of a house. We'll never see all this work that's been done. So that's the comments so far.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer.
Mr. Aliano, do you have any quick comments for us?
Yes, I'll be hopefully brief. I mean, I really like all the research you've done, and I really appreciate the fact that you've taken time to try to understand what this building is all about. And seeing the pictures of the original is really good. It gives us a better understanding of where you're trying to go with this. The analysis is very thoughtful. So for me, I mean, I also appreciate your drawings. All hand drawings. I think they're quite nice. The elevation that struck me the most and that I liked was the south elevation, which just the way it's composed with the different, sort of the hierarchy of fenestration and these openings, and then the horizontal plane of that upper story, that cuts that overhang. I thought that had a very nice modern feel. And then when you wrap the corner, it falls apart a little bit, but I sort of move away from that, and now that you've showed us that little perspective sketch, that's the one that to me kind of says it all. And for me, that if you were to achieve that, for me, it would be a very successful project. So, at first thought, I was thinking, the planning comments were right on, and they still are, but there is this sort of controversy about what to do with that roof, whether you keep it going. And, maybe it is sort of, it does feel more fluid, but then it doesn't achieve what you're trying to do. And so I sympathize with that, and I kind of leaning towards that right now, because I do want to see something different at that corner rather than a continuation of what's there already, even though it makes, sense in terms of constructability and But I like your approach in trying to really make something of that corner that's closer to what the original architect intended. So, but for me though, the way that elevation, the east elevation is reading with that high parapet, and the fact that the chimney is not even part of all this, it doesn't work. I think you're going to end up with a lot of fragments. At that corner, you're going to get that chimney in the back, and there's really not continuity between that plane and what you're proposing. So that's why I keep going back to that sketch. If you could just eliminate that horizontal line between the chimney and make that all one somehow, I think that for me will do it. And as far as the railing on the balcony and the main entrance, again, I really think Mr. Baxter's comments are right on. I think it should be open. But again, if I go by what you said, it sort of doesn't go along with your intent, which is to try to make these kind of bold shapes that kind of come closer to the original design. So from that perspective, I'm leaning towards that as well. Because what I'm seeing is that as you approach the house, you have sort of these sort of cubes that are sort of composing that whole corner rather than fragments of railings and things like that. So I'm actually excited. I think this could be really nice. But again, for me, though, you have to do something with that high parapet. I think it's just too high, and it's disconnected from the chimney. And by the way, it seems like there is a fireplace on the first floor, but then that chimney just shows up on the roof, but there's nothing on the second floor. It shows that it sounds like there's a flue in the wall somewhere that goes up to the roof. So to me, it sort of says that you could actually have more flexibility with the chimney on the roof. You could move it around. You could fur it out as needed to make it all work. So in the rear, the same thing. If you're going to wrap the rear, like you suggested, I would again probably create out of plane the rear as well, because now if you do wrap it, what happens to the eave? This eave here. If you're just going to wrap it and stop it here, or whatever you stop it there, you're going to get the eave that's going to be out of plane from this plane, which I think would be odd. So I thought maybe you do have to bring it out and create a footstep between that, so that you have a way to resolve this roof into a plane rather than have to look at kind of this eave that wants to go somewhere but it doesn't know where to go. So other than that, I agree with Ms. Palmer that the vertical rails are kind of out of place. Maybe you need to continue a parapet, a wall there as well, or a low wall with a pipe rail of some sort, or a metal rail, not a pipe rail, just to get the modern feeling back into that part of the house. But generally speaking, I could support it if you're willing to sort of make these adjustments.
Okay, I'll be super quick.
I wasn't very quick, but I'm sorry.
I'll be super quick. I think all the comments are good. I think you're very talented, and you've done a great job so far. Quick suggestion, I think, in my opinion, solves some of the issues very quickly. Consider thickening, since this is new construction, consider thickening up this element the same way you've thickened this up, so you get the same sort of deep reveal in these windows. So that plane, hey, okay, so now this plane and this plane starts speaking with each other. Consider simplifying this existing chimney and elongating it till about here with the same stucco or plaster that you've used here. So now you've created a box in the back that's long like this. So imagine it coming to here, completely wrap it and simplify it, have this thing die into it like you're dying into it here, so you have three different elements right there, and I think you're done with all the other comments. Other than that, I think it's pretty good.
Can I make a sort of a last?
Of course.
Because we're, in a way, I like what you're saying, but it's a little different than what I was just talking about, where you have the one plane. Are you suggesting one or the other, or?
Oh, I think just that. You got this box, and that box, and then let each one of those read as separate boxes. That's good. Now, this is just my quick thoughts. So, but I think overall, you certainly can take some of the comments and wrap it all up and be successful.
Okay. Well, I'm okay if we give them that option, either that option or the one that I suggest, and then you can play with it and see which one works better. What I suggested was trying to get us closer to this, but, I don't really mind what you suggest either. I think it could also work. So I think we should leave it open, but I'm always going back to that sketch. If the house can look like that sketch, for me, the parapet is a little bit too high.
Are you referring to this one?
Yeah. Yeah, because that sketch shows the parapet a little bit lower, and because of it, you're going to get to see more of the chimney. You're going to get to see this other piece.
Do you have our comments summarized, Mr. Baxter, where you can...
I think that I'll try and take that on.
All right.
The main comments that we heard were adjustments to the front addition piece, lower the parapet on that second floor addition, and fur out that wall so it indeed pops out in front of the existing plane of that existing bedroom. So I'll sort of go through these, and you can say which is a consideration, which is a condition. On that same element, so I thought maybe we'd wrap this all up in a single condition. That parapet then travels on the south side, wraps around the back, and there would be a thickened wall so that there's not a conflict with the existing eave that will remain. And then with the chimney, there are two options being proposed. Either incorporate the chimney to be more similar to the perspective sketch that's been provided this evening, where the chimney actually integrates with the facade and makes a kind of finishing point on the facade, or, as Chair Insua is recommending, the chimney is a separate box, if you will, behind the parapet. So those are the two options for the architect, but that would be conditioned to be a change to what the existing drawings show. So that's the most sort of important shift in the design that we've seen. Or heard, rather. Additional comments include modify the new railings that are shown to be more horizontal to integrate better with the other aspects of the design. There's an existing wood retaining wall that may be replaced. I think that was a consideration to reflect the other brick elements on the site work that are very rich. There's maybe also a consideration to look at including some of those rich site work elements into the new work of the house, or did I not hear that?
May not apply. I'm just...
Yeah,
I don't know
okay.
where they end and where the other begins.
Okay, so if there's work in the addition that's being done that would make a smooth transition from that existing brickwork, because those are details that haven't been shown and we haven't asked for. There's I think a consideration, not a condition, to thicken the wall of the entry so that there's a deeper recessed opening for that entry, so that there's some level of consistency between that top addition piece and the addition piece, and that creates or recreates a language that was the intent from the original architect. What I'm not exactly clear about is if the board is requesting any modifications to the parapet over the new entry piece. So I heard some comments about that, but they weren't that clear if that piece can remain. And so far, that's all I have.
Pretty good.
So the only thing we need to comment on is whether we want the parapet over the entry or whether. Yeah, I think what they're doing right now is pretty consistent with the rest of the addition, so I will leave it up to them and make it a consideration if they want to put railing there or not. But I think, I think you're on the right track. But again, I want to give you that option.
So at this point, the two conditions that we had, that we just had comments about it, or the planning conditions, really, we're not going in that direction at all. We're looking at this, and with modifications as stated by staff, we're going in that direction. We're not going to be considering the planning conditions.
Yeah, I think that's clear to us. Just to clarify, I'm not sure we made it clear in the report. We absolutely appreciate the attention given to the design by the designer and the team and the owner, and the intent to bring the original lines back. Our comments really originate, I think Board Member Aliano stated it, at the front elevation where those flat roofs appeared to us to be conflicting with the gable roofs. In the original design, that balcony provided a sense of relief, and those two horizontal lines and the gable lines weren't conflicting. So that was the source of our comments, but it seems that the board would like to simply modify the design as presented, and we fully appreciate that, and I think we clearly understand that, and that there's a consideration for the entry box that could be modified or not.
Good. Okay, I move for approval with the comments and conditions made.
Mr. Aliano, approved with conditions and comments.
May I ask one more question, please? I maybe want to pose this to the board and maybe, if necessary, get a response from the applicant. What is proposed, as we understand, are high-quality wood casement windows throughout. Often when we have proposed such a high-quality design, I'm not suggesting this will happen, but it sometimes has in our experience where there's unrecognized cost when it comes to the design review board, and there's a desire to change that element, and if the board chooses, we could provide in our conditions if it shows up that the applicant does want to modify for a less costly alternative, would aluminum or fiberglass casement windows also be appropriate for the design, so that as we move forward, the applicant does have the flexibility to do that. If we had that in the conditions, that would make it easy for us to work with the applicant.
Yeah, I'm definitely okay with fiberglass, paintable, or aluminum clad. Not vinyl.
Right, and it would be consistent with that nature of our.
Because the vinyl, the sections would be.
Thank you for that clarification.
And just to clarify, we're not going to use the conditions 1 and 2 from staff, and then we're going to follow the comments, considerations, and conditions from DRB. Good.
That's correct. Can I have a motion by Mr. Aliano and a second by Ms. Palmer? Are we ready for roll call? Mr. Aliano?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Simonia?
Yes.
And Mr. Insworth?
Yes.
Approved with conditions and comments.
Good job. All right, this is our last project of the evening. Case number 1, PDR 2010-044-A, project address 4104 Lowell Avenue. And good morning, or good evening, rather.
Good evening, Chairman Insua and board members. Thank you, Villia.
Or shall we say Vanna?
didn't hear that.
That's how we scooted.
Stretched out.
Thank you.
But you speak, though.
Mr. Chair, this project before you is located at 4104 Lowell Avenue. This project was last reviewed by this board back on January 21st, 2010. However, at that time, the project was completely different from the project that is before you tonight. That project amounted to a 5,915 square foot residence on two stories, which the board voted to have the project proceed with numerous comments at that time. The project before you tonight is essentially the same in terms of the fact that the applicant is requesting to legalize substantial unpermitted addition to the existing residence. The property was developed with a 916 square foot minimal traditional style house on a 19,190 square foot lot. This lot is different from the adjoining properties, which is located in the Foothill neighborhood. The difference is that this is a flag lot, and it does not address the street the same way as the other lots in this neighborhood. So essentially, you cannot see the property from the public right-of-way. Under the current proposal, the style of the residence has been changed significantly from the previous project, as well as the square footage. The applicant is proposing to demolish 346 square feet from the first floor and to demolish the entire second story. Now, before I go further, I neglected to provide you with old drawings that were reviewed back in January, but I have placed them in front of you. And if you compare the two projects, you can tell that there are significant differences between these two. As I was stated, 346 square feet will be demolished from the first floor, and the entire second floor will be removed completely. So the combined reduction in square footage totals 2,944 square feet. So what the applicant is proposing to maintain under this new project is 2,971 square feet on one level. The site planning of the proposed project will remain essentially the same in that it will be surround the new floor area that is proposed to be legalized will be around the existing one-story house, and the Foothill neighborhood does not have a particular design or prominent design as it's typically associated with other neighborhoods throughout the city. However, the chosen design needs to be consistent throughout and executed authentically. So 2 parking spaces will be provided as well, which will be attached to the house. And in terms of landscaping, essentially the existing landscape will be retained. However, the applicant is proposing to re-landscape the rear yard with, I believe, fescue ground cover. And the main features of this lot actually are the mature oak trees. Those trees will also be retained, and mitigation measures have been provided by our urban forestry division so that the tree will be protected during the construction. In terms of mass and scale, the project has been improved significantly due to the removal of the second story. The project is further improved via the flat roof design, which creates a low profile. The roof is further broken into smaller components at varying height, elevating some roof areas between 9 feet and 12 feet. The exterior walls are adequately articulated on the east and south elevations. However, if you refer to the west, north, and northwest elevations, the same articulation appear to be missing. But then again, these elevations face the interior property line, so that may be a consideration by the board. The overall building height is 12 feet, which is significantly lower than the permitted 25 feet by the zoning code. And all setback will meet current zoning requirements. In terms of the building design and detailing, the project design, as I stated previously, will be provided with a flat roof, and the wide overhangs will double as shading devices for the interior spaces. The roof will be clad in composition shingle. The wall will be clad in hardy plank as well as steel trowel stucco finish. The building fenestration pattern will be composed of bronze anodized aluminum windows in varying shapes and sizes. Staff believes that the fenestration is proportional and is fairly consistent throughout the entire project. But as I stated previously, the south elevation may benefit from additional windows, as this wall appears to be blank. And while it has not been clearly identified, staff also believe that the detail and location of the gutters and downspouts and garage doors are also important design elements and should be addressed appropriately given the style of the residence. And the combined material will provide interesting textures to this overall project. Overall, the applicant has made significant strides in making changes to this project when compared with the previous one and with this current one. Therefore, staff recommends approval of this project with conditions. And there were conditions, as contained in the staff report, that the board imposed on this project. I mean, if you like, I can go over each one, but staff believes that they have all been addressed appropriately.
I think that's good enough.
And if I may add to Rather's complete presentation, the conditions that you see listed in the staff report, there are unusually large number of conditions for a project that we strongly support, and we believe the board also strongly supports. The reason for that substantial number of conditions is because in our experience with the board, simple contemporary designs of this nature, the board, as we saw in the previous discussion on 1550 Moreno, the board is typically concerned with how the project is put together. So the proposal that's been made, we think is high quality. We're simply outlining what is proposed so that it will be clear as the project moves through that this is what the board approved.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Why don't we have our first applicant? I have 3 applicant cards. The first person would get 5 minutes if you want, but you tell us when you come up. So I'm just going to call the engineer first, the owner, or the applicant. So when you come up, your name and address, and I'll check you off.
Chairperson Insua and members of the board, my name is Neville Pereira. I live at 1224 Inverness Drive, La Cañada, Flintridge, 91011.
And would you like 5 minutes, sir?
I would like 5 minutes, please.
Very good.
Yeah. Speaking in support of the project, every one of the board members has seen the incarnation prior to this. Quite frankly, upon my engagement with this project, I was a little alarmed by what had manifested. We've been working with several types of designs, salvaging the second story, or attempting to salvage the second story, because the Shays and the Yzaguirres are a very large family. They actually have 11 grandkids right now, and in excess, I think, of eight kids in the house. However, in recognition of past violations and in order to bring the project into conformance with previous recommendations, we ended up on this particular design. The modern design is pretty well suited to this type of size of house. We've accentuated two areas by the raised roof for several reasons. Because of the size of the overall size of the house, it was really necessary to get light into the center of the house because they were quite a long distance away from the perimeter. Hence the transom windows. In addition to that, we are also probably going to suggest some skylight windows, very low profile curbs on those, to introduce more light into the project. The overhangs are there typically to complement the style of architecture and to increase the energy efficiency of the house on days where on the east side the sun's rising. I wanted to make one correction. It is going to be a rolled roof. It's not going to be a shingle roof. It's this slope cannot sustain a shingle roof. And even though we haven't detailed the gutters, we have details of those. Those are going to be hidden gutters behind the fascia, probably with chain release elements at various locations going down into planter areas. Some of the landscaping features, we have very rectangular blocks that I think are shown on the landscape plan, which with grass in between those pavers to introduce water back into the groundwater. Introduce rain back into the soil. And also with the recommendation of the city's urban forester, we are going to change the paving in and around the several oak trees that are on the site. Most of what we have done to remove the square footage from the floor area is to accommodate the area around the oak trees, enough breathing space around which was encroached in over the years. We're now relieving those oaks on several fronts. If you look at a demolition plan, you can see that along the patio side. Because it's a flag lot, it's somewhat unusual in that it doesn't have a frontage per se. Even coming in on the driveway, we haven't really accentuated that area. Mr. Duong has correctly stated that there doesn't seem to be enough fenestration on the south side. That is somewhat deliberate because its proximity to the freeway. The applicants, one of their primary requirements were to close down the fenestration because of the immense noise that comes off the freeway, which was the reason for us going with reduced fenestration on that frontage. If the board wishes, we will increase that and maybe go with sound insulated glass. The accentuated areas using not only a different material, the hardy plank siding is there to add not only differentiation but also to add texture. We've deliberately chosen a textured siding as opposed to just horizontal flat siding, just to again accentuate those features of the building. And that essentially concludes my presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions?
One question. Yes. The plans call out.
No, go ahead.
Plans call vinyl windows, and
Yeah, that was I apologize. The submittal is wrong. We are going to go with those bronze anodized.
Mill guard,
right?
Aluminum.
Right.
I had something too. Have you checked, as far as, I heard, I think it was Duong that said you are proposing asphalt shingle roofing, but your roof is flat.
No, he did say rolled pitch.
Oh, I missed that. Okay, so it's not okay,
it's not
perfect, because there's no guarantees on it.
Exactly.
On a shingle
Actually,
roof. Okay.
building and safety would never let that happen.
Any other questions for the Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Next person is the owner, Ms. Judy Shea. Name and address.
Judy
please.
Shea, 4104 Lowell Avenue, La
Thank you, ma'am.
Crescenta. And I don't know if you have any questions for me. I bought this in '06 as a place where my, well, they weren't 11 then, but I got 3 great-grandkids and 11 grandkids. And, yeah, it keeps growing, too. And we've been around this area since 1984, okay? You know, I've lived here on and off, and this is where my permanent residence is now. I had to stay away this year because I had a staph infection and open heart surgery. But, and I don't care if we have a second floor anymore because I can't walk up the stairs anyway. But I just want to see this project over and done with and completed and get on with life and in a very positive framework and attitude and join the Women's Club and the Kiwanis instead of worrying about, you know, going through planning and all these other things. But, you know, I enjoy this area. I always have. My grandkids I have one in Dunsmuir now and one in Rosemont, 2 in CV High. One's graduating again. So we, you know, even the reason why we needed all the additional space, we got 2 other kids in college already. So some of that has diminished. And in June, we'll have another one graduating from CV High, so it'll diminish even more. We'll be willing to do whatever we can. It's like they were saying about the south side. Yeah, there is a lot of noise from the freeway, and they did come out to say that they aren't going to put a wall up on the freeway for some reason. It didn't qualify or something. But we could put bigger windows there, you know, whatever. But we'll do everything we can to comply with you, building, safety, fire, everybody. You know, we just want to get this over and get it rectified and get on with life.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
You deserve it. And the next person I have here is the owner applicant, also Jesse.
Jesse is Gary, 4104 Lowell. I can only sound redundant. A couple things I just wanted to repeat. You had said 75 feet from Moreno Drive. This is 200 feet off the street. It's completely invisible. I can only see it when I'm driving by the 210 freeway, 45 feet above looking down, so it is very hidden away. We got a professional help to construct or design a house that would fit to the natural elements of the lot, which are the mature trees, which we really have been working very hard to save. And I think we've come up with a very good plan for that. And we have to also design for the unnatural element, which is the 210 freeway is our neighbor. We didn't qualify for sound walls by 1 decibel, so it's 64 decibels we have. I guess you get sound walls if you have 65 decibels, so it's a very noisy lot. Vibrations from big trucks, and during the night it actually gets louder because the trucks accelerate speed and come down the Lowell Avenue grade, and so that's why we, you know, minimize the windows on that side. But well, I hope you like the project, and because we do, and we're looking forward to this transition.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Do we have any questions or anybody yet? Okay, why don't we have the public portion and over, and why don't we, Ms. Palmer, if you could start us.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you took our comments and came up with, I think, was a pretty nice design. And I know it's not seen. I really don't have any issues with what's showing up there. If they don't want to put the windows on that side, I know it is a sound issue. The only other concern I have is the landscaping. I would like to see a landscape plan. You've got about 80% of this yard is covered with tree canopies. The lawn's not going to grow. It's lawn everywhere. So I think we need something that's conducive to the type of trees you have, and get a professional to come up with a plan, and I think you'll have a very nice project.
I think what correct me if I'm wrong, one of the things we want to always say is professionally done. That doesn't necessarily need to be a licensed architect, but professionally done, so all the information is there, whether it be professionally done. Residentials can do things themselves. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Aliano.
Okay. I agree with you. The only thing I'm going to say is that respect to the clear story window that you have there, I probably want to say the same thing I said with the previous project. Whenever you have these clear stories, there's an opportunity there to make these things look like they're popping up. So instead of punch openings there, I would still try to do some kind of continuous ribbon windows so that you get, when you light up the house at nighttime, you get a much better glow. And then these, when I see the house is very simple with these hats, basically these caps. And you have caps on the main house, and then you have the secondary caps that are popping up. And because they're popping up, you want to accentuate that with your windows. And the way the windows are right now, punch openings, you don't quite get that feeling, because you could actually wrap that all the way to the front door. When you come to the front door, you'll see that clear story, and you'll see it all the way around. And it will give, spatially, I think internally, you'll get a better feel. Approach the entry, you'll get. And the front door could also get a little bit larger, maybe have a side light that sort of works with the clear story above. But it sounds like you have a good handle on this. I'm not worried at all, and I like what you've done.
Mr. Simonian.
Well, I'd like to commend you on your willingness to work with the city on this situation. Because what we had before was this, and, wow. When I compare what is presented to us today and what was there before, I don't remember the last time there was such a big, drastic improvement. And so we appreciate that, and we really hope that you'll be able to move past this as quickly as possible, and that we hope and wish that you're able to successfully complete this in a timely manner. I think the designer has done a wonderful job simplifying the design and just going with a simple contemporary design. And at times that's more difficult to do than an ornate one. But in this case, it's done in a positive manner. In fact, some of the comments that were made about the noise coming from the freeway, because this property is a flag lot, because it's not visible from the street, which probably caused all the issues to begin with. But because of its location, orientation, and lack of visibility from the street, if noise is an issue, I would just suggest eliminating those windows if you can, and then getting your light from the two other sides, because those bedrooms certainly could get light from different walls, as I'm seeing. I think aluminum windows are the way to go, as staff is recommending. They should have no grids. I absolutely agree with that. I love the idea of having chain downspouts. I think that would work wonderfully well and would be very much coherent, cohesive with the overall design. Some of the comments that were made about drought-tolerant landscaping and clear story windows are all in line. I think this is going to be a wonderful home, and I think you'll be very happy with it.
I concur. Sorry for your stress and pain for the last few years. You didn't deserve it, and it's time, like you said, to get it. And as my wife said, listen to the universe. It speaks to you, and sometimes let things go and move in the right direction. You are to be commended. And with respect to the sound, it's a flag lot. No one can see it. Do the windows the way that you think you need to, in my opinion. And good luck. Rather, do you have all the thoughts and stuff so we can...
Okay, so let me just go over the comments that we heard. One is that the board would like to see a professionally prepared landscape plan. And second comment was to provide, instead of just simply clear story windows, provide continuous ribbon windows instead of this punched openings.
Would that be a consideration or
that sounded
consideration?
Like consideration.
Yeah. I think I would strongly encourage it, but I'm sure there's money issues. So you have to have some stronger.
Come on, please. You poo-pooers, you engineers.
Well, maybe you do it localized. Maybe you do the, probably not the corners because that's the most critical, but you might want to maybe do the corners and do some sheer panels in the middle, whatever it takes to sort of make it look like a nice floating hat.
But it's a consideration.
Yeah, I think so. It's fine with me.
And also, staff heard comment concerning the side light, adding a side light to the front door to make it larger.
Make it feel like a front door. Right now, it looks very uninviting.
Okay, so that is condition though.
Okay.
For me, it should be. I don't know how the board feels, but they can design it any way you want.
I'll help the design.
Yeah, I think it will be very important.
Keep going, rather.
And then we heard a comment that the windows along the south elevation, if the owner chooses, can be removed due to the noise issue. And now, just so that we're all clear, what are the board thoughts on the conditions that staff proposed?
I think you've, if I may. Of course. Number one has already been addressed, and we should absolutely keep that. Number two as well. Number three, we haven't addressed nor talked about, and we perhaps could just delete that one.
Okay.
Number four, I think as indicated on the material board, it says South Moss Steel Travel Smooth Finish, and so we'll keep that. Number five, all windows to be aluminum bronze anodized as proposed, and the applicant has provided a mill guard aluminum window and door sample, and so that is good. Number six, we're striking. Number seven, we should keep. That's a good idea. We're talking about very clean recessed aluminum windows with no ornamentation or trim around it. Number eight.
Okay, number seven, window trim should not be used. I got it. Very good.
What I think the staff is wanting to do here is to ensure the design. So number 8, to ensure the design, nail down those type of windows as proposed. Number 9, windows should not possess any divided lights as currently shown. Number 10, taller portion of the north and west elevation should be provided as a horizontal siding. I think we can eliminate that because we felt that the design is consistent and good. So number 10 is omit. And then lastly, number 11, the garage door should be a simple design of either wood and horizontal panel design, aluminum frame, or opaque frosted glass. Appropriate attention should be given to design and detail gutters.
And I could suggest maybe something on that note. They have some wonderful steel garage doors that are factory painted. They come in several colors, brown, dark brown, which is very impressive, and it actually has opaque windows on the top as a horizontal strip. Very affordable and look wonderful with this kind of an architecture.
Okay. Well, the last comment I wanted to ask talks about gutters. Are we actually going to have gutters? So we're going to have downspouts? Yes. But they don't show on the elevation, so those are very critical where you put it.
Talking about chains, downspouts?
Oh, like a chain at the end. That would be nice.
Into the landscaping portion.
Okay, I missed that. Okay.
Yeah, and I think we heard from the applicant that the gutters will be concealed behind a fascia.
Yeah.
So we can include that as the condition.
I think so. 'Cause I think gutters will now, downspouts will not work.
And the chain as a condition. What I'd like to suggest for items 4 and 5, 4, stucco finish should be steel trowel finish as proposed. What I'd like to suggest is if applicant wants to modify that to a smooth, light sand finish, because this project, as you mentioned, is not going to be seen. I think the concern that we had on this one is because it is so near the freeway. If it has a rougher finish, it will tend to collect dirt. But the light sand finish could be in lieu of the steel trowel finish. That gives the staff flexibility to work with them if they so desire. And then, so I'm hearing that's fine. And then number 5, similar to what we asked in the previous project, all windows should be aluminum bronze anodized as proposed. I'd like to add alternatively fiberglass windows or aluminum clad windows could also be used just to give that level of flexibility. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have a motion?
I'll move to approve based on the conditions.
I'll second.
Okay, there was a motion by Ms. Palmer to approve the project with conditions and a second by Mr. Simonian. This will be roll call. Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
Mr. Eliano?
Yes.
Chairman Insua?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Okay. And I think our final order of business today is the minutes of the past.
Correct. We have two sets of minutes. One from September 30th, 2010.
And I was here, and I just read them, and they seem consistent. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I know. Thank you. Well, thank you. All right. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Good luck and
All
happy
righty.
holidays. Back to our hearing.
Thank you. Okay, the first one is the minutes of September 30th, which I was here.
Correct.
I read them and during our process, and they seem consistent with what I remember. You guys comfortable with it?
I'm fine with them.
Okay.
Okay, so I have, do you need a motion and a second and a roll call for minutes approval?
Very good.
So do I
No,
have
we
a
wanted to get you to your party.
No. So I have Board Member Insua, Palmer, and you who are eligible to vote. So Mr. Yu is not here, so it's only Ms. Palmer and Mr. Insua.
Is that okay?
Yes. So all in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Okay. 2-0. And then the minutes from November the 18th.
Yes, and
Board Member Eliano, Palmer, and Simonian. Board members?
Yes.
I was not here.
Correct. And there was a comment made by Board Member Palmer regarding...
Corrected that.
Pardon?
You corrected that.
Correct, as opposed to that all the columns, not just the column on the project was listed. So with that said, who would like to make a motion, since there are three of you here?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Yes, Mr. Simonian, a second by Mr. Eliano. Mr. Eliano?
Yes.
Simonian?
Yes.
Palmer?
Yes.
It passes 3-0. Last but not least, since this is the last meeting of 2010, we want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, Season's greetings, and a great, happy, fabulous New Year. And we will see you back here January the 20th.
Next year.
Next year.
Wow.
All right, well, thank you for all your support.
That's right.
Happy
Enjoy.
holidays to you.
Is there a motion to adjourn the
Happy
meeting
holidays.
at 8:30?
I move to
8:30.
adjourn.
All right, thank you.
We're adjourned.
Okay.
And